Han Yunshi hardened her heart and asked back, "Your Highness, why are you asking so many questions?" "It's useful," Long Feiyi answered. "What's the use?" Han Yunshi continued to argue with him. Long Feiyi smiled and asked ambiguously, "What do you think?" Han Yunshi's face turned red again. Suddenly, she did not know how to answer. She thought that she must be crazy to discuss this topic with this man. "All right, that's it. I'm leaving." She wanted to escape. Long Feiyi took her hand and pulled her into his embrace as he asked very seriously. This time, he asked, "Han Yunshi, who taught you these things?" He actually asked so many questions, and his real motive was actually this. Han Yunshi really wanted to cry. She had already cursed Tang Li's 18 great ancestors in her heart for starting this topic. "Answer me." Long Fei's smooth chin gently rubbed against her cheek as their ears rubbed against each other intimately. Still, his voice was low and deep. "I read it from a book." Han Yunshi answered truthfully. "Really?" Long Fei's tone was filled with threat. Han Yunshi swore that she'd never seen anyone so jealous in her life. So narrow-minded, so calculative. She pushed him aside and stared seriously into his eyes. Could it be fake? Long Feiyi hugged her again and sighed softly. After a long time, he replied, "It's not allowed to be fake." Han Yunshi discovered that his voice was different now. It sounded gentle and helpless, like a sigh, but also like a warning. She didn't know why, but her heart suddenly calmed down. She let him hug her and let his big hand gently pat her back. "Long Feiyi, what are you sighing about?" "Long Feiyi, what are you helpless about?" "Yunshi's been fine and obedient all this time." "Yunshi, I've never made things hard for you, have I?" The next day, Han Yunshi and Long Feiyi prepared to leave for the Tang clan. Long Feiyi took care of some matters at hand before leaving with Han Yunshi to bid farewell to Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue's leg injury was already slowly recovering. At first, Han Yunshi came every day to treat him with acupuncture, but after 3 days, he declined and said he knew how to do it himself. Han Yunshi didn't agree, but he used Han Yunshi's acupuncture skills as an excuse to refuse. Han Yunshi had no choice but to let him do as he pleased. After returning from the medical cottage, he'd been recuperating. Besides occasionally sitting in his wheelchair in the courtyard to get some fresh air, he spent most of his time in his room. Han Yunshi worried that he'd be bored, but later discovered that he could spend an entire day reading a medical book. His leg only needed to rest. Besides acupuncture, he didn't need much care. After 100 days of rest, he'd be fully healed. It wasn't clear whether Gu Beiyue knew about Tang Li, but they couldn't tell Gu Beiyue that they were going to the Tang clan. After all, Long Fei's origins had to be kept a secret. Han Yunshi didn't treat Gu Beiyue as an outsider, nor did she want to hide anything from him. However, this was Long Fei's secret, so the fewer people who knew, the better. After all, if this was leaked, Tianning's imperial clan would definitely make a fuss about it. There might even be traitors in the south-central regions. In this world, one's bloodline was a very important factor. They simply said they were going on a long trip. "Will you be gone for long?" Gu Beiyue asked seriously. Before Han Yunshi could reply, Long Feiyi asked, "Is something the matter?" Gu Beiyue was only concerned, but Long Feiyi's question was hurtful. Han Yunshi felt uncomfortable at the question, but Gu Beiyue said seriously, "This one's leg was saved by your highness and esteemed Wang Fei. If this one can stand up, I'll definitely pay my respects to you too. I'm afraid that if you two aren't back in 100 days, this one's return to Pill Fiend Pharmacy will be delayed by a few days." Han Yunshi didn't like Gu Beiyue's courteous words, but her heart still warmed at his words. "It won't be 100 days. I still want to see you stand up with my own eyes," she said seriously. Long Feiyi didn't say anything. They sat for a while longer before leaving. As soon as they left, they saw Gu walking towards them. Seeing Gu Beiyue calmed one's heart. Seeing Gu, one's spirit was lifted. Han Yunshi hurriedly waved. "Old ghost, how's it going?" Long Feiyi had given him 10 days to deal with Madame Lianxin's matter, and it was about time. Gu was originally listless, but he immediately perked up when he saw Han Yunshi. He looked at the two of them and smiled. "Where are you going?" "Sightseeing," Long Feiyi answered. Gu glanced at him, his eyes clearly saying, I'm not asking you. Poison lass, where are you going? He asked with a smile. Han Yunshi avoided the question and asked seriously, have you finished dealing with Madame Lianshin's matter? Not yet. Gu's expression darkened. What's going on? Long Fei Yi asked seriously. Things didn't go well with Mu Linger, so I haven't touched Madame Lianshin's matter yet, Gu said indifferently. What's going on? Long Fei Yi was still very concerned about this matter. Unexpectedly, Gu replied faintly, that damned girl said she wanted to come over and talk. He then turned to Han Yunshi seriously. Poison lass, you didn't reveal anything, right? Chapter 639. What did Han Yunshi divulge? She had divulged it a long time ago, and she had divulged it all. No. Are you suspecting me? Han Yunshi was especially serious. Seeing that she was about to get upset, Gu immediately waved his hands. No. I'm just. Why do you think that girl came here all of a sudden? Maybe she wanted to ask you about medicine. I gave her an ancient medicine tome, but she probably couldn't understand it, Han Yunshi guessed. An ancient medicine tome? Gu didn't understand. I got it from the king of medicine. It's so old that I can't even understand some of the words. Han Yunshi strayed further and further away from the topic. Gu wasn't stupid. Between people, especially between men and women, there was always someone who had the upper hand. In front of Han Yunshi, Gu was always happy and foolish. Oh, he believed her just like that. Han Yunshi said earnestly, Old ghost, that girl Ling, is my little sister and the pillar of Pill Fiend Pharmacy. She can be considered the Mu family's last hope. Teach her well, all right? Gu nodded without a second thought. Don't worry. Discuss Madame Lianshin's matter properly with her when she comes, Han Yunshi added. Gu nodded again. Then we'll take our leave first, Han Yunshi said. Gu nodded again. When Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi got into the carriage and it drove away, he finally came to his senses and chased after them. Hey, where are you going? When are you coming back? How could he be at ease when he didn't know her whereabouts? This time, it was Long Fei Yi who answered. Taking a walk to admire the flowers, Gu stood in the middle of the road, motionless. After a long time, he shrugged his shoulders and turned his head back with an enchanting smile. He looked up at the blue sky and suddenly realized that it was spring. This was the best time to be in spring. Taking a walk to admire the flowers, he couldn't help but miss the taste of the wilderness. It had been a long time since he went back. By the time Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi reached the Tang clan, there was still a day left before Aunt Ru's appointment with Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. The Tang sect's territory was vast, encompassing the entire Crouching Dragon Mountain Range. There were 3 peaks in the Crouching Dragon Mountain Range: the Heavenly Dragon Mountain Range, the Earth Dragon Mountain Range, and the Divine Dragon Mountain Range. There were 2 basins between the mountains and a mountain stream. The Divine Dragon Mountain was the main peak of the Crouching Dragon Mountain Range. It was where the sect leader resided. The Heavenly Dragon Mountain, Earth Dragon Mountain, and 2 other valleys were where the disciples resided. The main gates of the Tang clan were at the foot of the Crouching Dragon Mountain Range, surrounded by members of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Long Fei Yi brought Han Yunshi to the back of the mountain and passed through a deep ravine to reach the main peak. No one noticed them the entire way, which was proof of Long Fei Yi's familiarity with the Tang clan. Divine Dragon Mountain was extremely precipitous. Like Mount Hua itself, there was only one way up, and many parts of the path were almost parallel to the mountain itself. It was impossible to stand on one's feet, so one had to use both hands and feet to climb up. With such a steep drop and no safety measures, only an expert would be able to make it. Han Yunshi looked at the path and mused that even an expert would have a hard time climbing this mountain. As soon as someone attacked from the top, the consequences would be unthinkable. But Long Fei Yi didn't need to use any lightness techniques to carry her. As soon as they stepped onto the plank path, the hidden mechanisms beneath activated. Their feet touched nothing as they fell to the ground. Han Yunshi hugged Long Fei Yi tightly as she exclaimed, "Is this a trap?" After all, she was still on her guard against Aunt Ru. "No, it's not. Don't be afraid." Long Fei Yi held her tightly as he flew forward. Soon enough, they reached the center of the cave, where Han Yunshi saw something that looked like an elevator. The setup was very similar, but this elevator wasn't powered by electricity, but by manual labor. Good heavens, the Tang clan is the Tang clan after all. They can actually create something like this. The plank path outside must be used to confuse the enemy. Han Yunxi mused that there must be plenty of peerless hidden weapons hidden in this mountain. The low-key and mysterious Tang clan really is a force to be reckoned with. By the time they reached the top of the mountain with the help of the elevator, they saw Aunt Ru walking towards them. Now that they were in the Tang clan's territory, she would be able to track their movements. "Fei, you're finally back." Aunt Ru smiled as she warmly welcomed them. Just like when they first met, she didn't think much of Han Yunxi. Long Fei, you wouldn't pay attention to anyone who didn't think much of Han Yunxi. Without a word, he led Han Yunxi straight to the Tang clan's courtyard. "Fei, you've grown up." "So rude." Aunt Ru scolded. Unfortunately, Long Fei still ignored her. What could Aunt Ru do to him? Even though she was an elder, when it came to status, the entire Tang sect, including Tang Zijin, had to treat her with respect. They were already far away, but Aunt Ru was still watching them with a strange smile on her face. She seemed to be calculating something. With Long Fei by her side, Han Yunxi completely forgot about Aunt Ru. The entire way, she carefully observed everything at the peak. She discovered that the largest hall on Divine Dragon Mountain was the Divine Dragon Hall in the middle. That should be the Tang clan's main hall, but the main doors were shut tight and the side doors were locked. It didn't seem like anyone was living inside. Han Yunxi didn't think too much about it, but assumed that this place was similar to an ancestral hall used for sacrifices. Around the Divine Dragon Hall was a circle of courtyards of various sizes about 500 to 600 meters away. Tang Li's residence was in the middle of them. As expected, the young head of the Tang clan was different. Although his courtyard was small, it was luxuriously decorated with red walls, green tiles, and white bricks. Even the furniture inside was plated with gold. Such a luxurious courtyard would be a sight to behold in the city, but in the midst of green hills and clear waters, it was simply a waste of the environment. Tacky. It was impossible to imagine Tang Li dressed in white and looking like an immortal standing in the doorway. What kind of scene would that be? In any case, Han Yunxi felt unwell from the sight. When the servants in the courtyard saw Long Fei and Han Yunxi, they were all frightened. One by one, they knelt down and saluted. "Greetings to your Highness Duke of Qin. This is the Princess Consort," Long Fei introduced. The servants were a little surprised, but they all respectfully saluted Han Yunxi. "Greetings to esteemed Princess Consort. Where's your young master?" Long Fei asked. Young master, has been bedridden for a day," the guard timidly said. "What happened?" Han Yunxi was anxious. Long Fei knew what was going on and pulled her into the bedroom. As soon as they entered, they saw Tang Li lying on the warm bed, dejected. "Father, even if you beat me to death, I won't marry into the family. You won't die from being spanked," Long Fei said. Tang Li immediately turned around. When he saw Long Fei and Han Yunxi, he hurriedly tried to get up. But the moment he moved, the wounds on his butt split open. It was so painful that he had no choice but to lie back down. "Brother, save me." He was very aggrieved. As Han Yunxi watched, she suddenly had the urge to go over and slap Tang Li's butt. Of course, she could only think about it in her heart. Who knew that as soon as Long Fei walked over, he would slap Tang Li's butt? Tang Li immediately screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Han Yunxi shook her head. This brat's nature was like a child who never grew up. How could Ning Jing like him? Ning Jing was such a strong woman, so she should have found a more mature and domineering man. It wasn't until Long Fei muffled Tang Li's mouth that he finally quieted down. "What's Zhang Qiuzi's attitude?" Long Fei asked. "Ask him? He. What else does that stinking brat know besides causing trouble?" Tang Zijin's voice drifted in from outside the door. Tang Li rolled his eyes and hung his head to play dead. In his father's heart, he was nothing more than a tool. Did it matter what he knew or didn't know? Unlike Aunt Ru, Tang Zijin nodded at Han Yunxi as soon as he entered the room. It counted as a greeting. Naturally, Han Yunxi returned the gesture with a nod of her own. "Fei, please come to the tea house. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium will send someone back tomorrow. There are some things we need to discuss," Tang Zijin said seriously. Let's discuss it here. Tang Li is listening too. Long Fei Yi didn't care whether Tang Zijin agreed or not, but simply sat down by Tang Li's side. Han Yunqi immediately followed suit. Tang Li's head was bowed, but he was grinning from ear to ear. As long as Brother Long was here, he'd be safe. That had been the case since he was young. Who's Cloud Realm sending over? Long Fei Yi asked. It's not clear yet, but it's very likely that it'll be Ning Cheng, Tang Zijin said. Between Song Qiuzi and the Tang clan, which side would Ning Cheng choose to offend or befriend? What would Ning Cheng think if Tang Li had a personal relationship with him? Long Fei Yi wondered. Fei, you should persuade that stinking brat. He's not marrying into the Ning clan, but the Ning clan's woman instead. This? Hee, old man is really. Before Tang Zijin could finish, a fierce female voice cut him off. So what if he's not marrying into the Ning clan? Is there anything wrong with that? Tang Zijin, do you know what you're doing? You're forcing your son to marry into the Ning clan, and you still think you're in the right? Tang Zijin, I'm telling you now, if you keep forcing my Li, I'll fight you to the death. A charming woman strode into the room, holding a handkerchief as she sobbed. She didn't care who else was in the room, but threw herself at Tang Li as soon as she saw him. My Li, why is your life so bitter? How could you have such a heartless father? Sob sob. Why is my life so bitter? How could I have such a worthless husband? Son, if we can't survive tomorrow, we'll jump off Divine Dragon Peak together. We'll be mother and son again in our next lives. We don't want that heartless father of yours. Han Yunqi was stunned. Although she'd heard that Tang Li had a mother who doted on him, she never expected her to be such a person. What a sharp tongue. Tang Zijin's beard stood on end as he listened. He seemed to be a little henpecked, but he wouldn't budge on this matter. Furious, he said, what does a woman like you know? Stop crying and wailing here and making a fool of yourself. Someone come, take madam away. Mother, save me. Mother, Tang Li shouted. Tang Zijin, I'm telling you now, if I leave this door today, I'll don't regret it, Madame Tang said before shoving aside the servants and rushing out herself. Alarmed, Tang Li scrambled to his feet, ignoring his pain to chase after her. Tang Zijin seemed to be frightened as well, because he quickly followed after her. Inside the room, Han Yunqi only felt that everything was a mess, but Long Fei Yi had long gotten used to it. He asked thoughtfully, who do you think Cloud Realm Trade Consortium will send? To put it bluntly, tomorrow's meeting was a negotiation. The people who came to negotiate would directly affect the difficulty of the negotiation. Chapter 640. Long Fei Yi was wondering who Cloud Realm Trade Consortium would send to negotiate, but Han Yunqi was more concerned about the family of three who'd just run out. She asked doubtfully, Long Fei Yi, should we go take a look? Lady Tang won't take things too hard, will she? It's fine. Long Fei Yi had long gotten used to the family of three. Actually, he wasn't Tang Li's greatest savior, but Lady Tang. He rarely made a move, but Lady Tang couldn't tolerate her son being punished in the slightest. With Long Fei Yi's words, Han Yunqi stopped worrying. Ouyang Ning Jing and Ouyang Ning Nuo won't be coming, so it should be Ouyang Ning Cheng, Han Yunqi said. The surname Ouyang represented Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's identity, while the Ning clans. The secret of the Ning and D clans hadn't been exposed, nor had the fact that Ning Cheng was the boss behind Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Han Yunqi and the rest had deduced this based on Chu Tianing's clues and the fact that the Chu and Ning clans had colluded. Most likely, Ning Cheng and the rest were still thinking highly of themselves and had no idea that Chu Tianing had long sold them out. If he really agrees to marry into the family, it'll definitely raise suspicions, Han Yunqi said seriously. She didn't want Tang Li to marry into Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, both for public and private reasons. After all, Tang Li was still the eldest young master of the Tang clan and Tang Zijin's only son. He was the future successor of the Tang clan. If they really agreed to let Tang Li marry into Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, even a normal person would suspect that the Tang clan had ulterior motives, much less someone as astute as Ning Cheng. Long Fei Yi nodded thoughtfully. If he didn't marry into the family, he wouldn't be able to get deep into Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Then there wouldn't be much point in facilitating the marriage. But if he did, he'd lose face for the Tang clan and appear to have ulterior motives. That was truly a difficult problem. Judging from Tang Li's reaction just now, Tang Zijin probably didn't know what to do. Han Yunxi and Long Fei were deep in thought when they saw Mrs. Tang come in with Tang Li. Tang Zijin followed beside them with an ugly expression. It seemed that he couldn't do anything about this mother and son. Fei, is there a way to avoid marrying into the family? Tang Zijin asked seriously. It's difficult, Long Fei said honestly. Han Yunxi pondered for a moment and smiled. I have an idea. She gestured for everyone to come closer and whispered her idea. Everyone listened in disbelief, but it was undeniable that her idea was the best and only way. However, Tang Li's face did not look good at all. He pointed 2 fingers at Han Yunxi and asked incredulously, 2? Yes, just 2. Han Yunxi was very serious. As for what the 2 they were talking about, only the few of them knew. Ning Jing won't agree, Tang Li was certain. Aya, you haven't even married your wife yet, but you already know her so well? Han Yunxi teased. Tang Li felt helpless. If this was any other time, he wouldn't be so easily teased. But now that he'd made such a big mistake, he could only accept Han Yunxi's teasing. In any case, she'll never agree with a personality like hers. I don't think we'll be able to negotiate tomorrow, Tang Li said seriously. Before Han Yunxi could speak, Tang Zijin lost his temper and scolded. You don't believe that she'll marry you, but you don't want to marry into the family either. What else do you want? If you have any skills, then don't cause so much trouble. Old man is telling you now, if not for Fei's face, old man would never let a woman from the Ning clan take half a step into our Tang clan, even if it meant offending Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. His words made it sound like Tang Li would marry no one but Ning Jing. Tang Zijin pursed his lips, too lazy to argue with his father. Tang Zijin couldn't take it anymore and raged. Then what good ideas do you have? Let's hear them. Tang Li shut his mouth resentfully. If he had any ideas, would he still be waiting for the Long Fei and Han Yunxi to come? But the more he thought about it, the more he felt that Han Yunxi's ideas were unreliable. If there's no other way, then it's settled. If they don't agree, Tang Zijin sighed. If they don't agree, then we'll delay it for a few more days. Seeing Tang Zijin so angry, Han Yunxi couldn't help but categorize him as one of the cheaters. The next day, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's representatives arrived as promised. It had to be said that their arrival surprised both Han Yunxi and Long Fei, because it was none other than the man who'd negotiated with them and lost miserably. Ouyang Ningnua. Ouyang Ningnua had only brought 2 servant girls and 3 guards with him. If this was a battle of words, then Ouyang Ningnua had come alone. The Tang clan's representatives included Tang Zijin, Lady Tang, and Aunt Ru. Han Yunxi, Long Fei, and Tang Li were all hiding behind the guest hall, separated only by a wooden wall. They could hear everything that was being said there clearly. As soon as Ouyang Ningnua sat down, Tang Zijin ordered someone to serve tea while Han Yunxi and the rest began to discuss the matter in secret. Sister-in-law, we've won for sure. With Ouyang Ningnua's skills, he's not even fit to carry your shoes. Tang Li was the happiest of them all. Your mouth's getting sweeter and sweeter. Han Yunxi grinned. Sister-in-law, if I marry Ouyang Ningjing, won't Ouyang Ningnua become my brother-in-law? Tang Li asked with a grin. Han Yunxi looked him up and down with disdain. You're in a good mood. Does your butt not hurt anymore? Tang Li subconsciously rubbed his butt and lowered his head. By now, Tang Zijin and Ouyang Ningnua had finished exchanging pleasantries and were officially entering the negotiations. Your Excellency, clan head, we're all sensible people. There are no outsiders here today, so let's get straight to the point. Ouyang Ningnua seemed to be very straightforward, but everyone knew that he wasn't. Tang Zijin stroked his beard and said in a heavy tone, All right, what's done can't be undone. What's done can't be undone. There's no point in blaming your son. Let's just discuss the matter of marrying into our family. Ouyang Ningnua wasn't being straightforward at all. He was going too far. Was he here to discuss how to deal with the matter, or was he here to deal with it directly? Tang Zijin didn't want to hurt their relationship so quickly, but Ouyang Ningnua's words had infuriated him. You should know very well what's done. Ouyang Ningnua looked confused. What do you mean, Your Excellency clan head? This one doesn't understand. You don't understand? Haha, why don't we make a trip to Medical City together and find out what kind of medicine Tang Li has in his body? Tang Zijin asked angrily. Long Fei Yi and Tang Li were shocked to hear this. How could they possibly find out what kind of aphrodisiac was used? My father knows about this too? Tang Li muttered to himself. Long Fei Yi glanced at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi lowered her head in silence. She was the one who'd told Tang Zijin about this. Soon enough, Tang Li understood what was going on. He asked in a low voice, Sister-in-law, can you really find out? How are you going to do that? Han Yunxi pretended not to hear him. When she didn't answer, Tang Li wanted to ask more, but no sound came out of his mouth. He was mute again. After a long while, when Long Fei Yi didn't say anything, Han Yunxi took the initiative to explain. This was just a ploy to scare Ouyang Ningnua. I don't know if I can find out anything. So, Long Fei Yi heard her, but he didn't say anything. Tang Li wanted to say something, but he couldn't. As expected, Ouyang Ningnua had been scared stiff. It wasn't that he couldn't take the scare, but that he knew the truth. Moreover, he really didn't know anything about aphrodisiac. Although he was scared, he didn't back down immediately. He stared at Tang Zijin in silence. So, Tang Zijin pressed on as soon as he gained the upper hand. Although Ouyang Ningnua felt guilty, he quickly calmed down and smiled. What is the meaning of this, honorable clan master? This one really doesn't understand. You don't understand? All right, then let's go to Medical City. We'll discuss this when we get back. Tang Zijin stood up as he spoke. Han Yunxi silently admired him. Tang Zijin wasn't the head of the Tang clan for nothing after all. He had quite the guts. Ouyang Ningnua wasn't easy to deal with either. He also stood up and bowed humbly. This one is slow-witted and truly doesn't understand what honorable clan master is trying to say. If we can find an answer when we get to Medical City, this one is willing to accompany you. They're really going at it this time. Haha, someone prepare the carriage. Tang Zijin was very decisive. Ouyang Ningnua didn't stop him. Instead, he slowly said, Honorable clan master, are you suspecting that your son has been drugged? Even if we find out who drugged him, we won't be able to find out who did it. Although he had no intention of stopping Tang Zijin, his words had successfully broken Tang Zijin's trap. What he meant was that even if they found out that Tang Li had been drugged, Ouyang Ningjing wouldn't admit to it. No one could do anything to her. Although Tang Zijin was angry at Tang Li's incompetence, he was still very protective of him. Coldly, he said, At least we can prove my son's innocence. When he heard this, Tang Li was quite moved. He nodded repeatedly. Ouyang Ningnua nodded as well, a pensive look on his face. After a while, he said something that would infuriate Ouyang Ningnua to death. Aphrodisiacs have always had the effect of livening things up. What a roundabout way of putting it. What he meant was blatant humiliation. In other words, he was implying that the drug in Tang Li's body might have been his own doing to liven things up. Tang Zijin was so angry that his beard was sticking up. Tang Li, who was hiding in the back, almost charged out to fight Ouyang Ningnua. Fortunately, Long Fei Yi stopped him. In the end, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi had to deal with a despicable person like Ouyang Ningnua. Tang Zijin was so angry that he couldn't speak. However, he suddenly heard Long Fei Ye's ventriloquism. After listening to it, his expression finally improved. He used Long Fei Ye's ventriloquism to deal with Ouyang Ningnua. You and I will take a trip to Medicine City. The rest will be left for the world to judge. Ouyang Ningnua's expression darkened at these words. Originally, public opinion had been biased towards Ouyang Ningjing. Everyone sympathized with Ouyang Ningnua and denounced the Tang clan on her behalf. If they really did go to Medicine City and found traces of aphrodisiac in Tang Li's body, there would be plenty of rumors. Some people would think that Tang Li had used the drug himself to liven things up, while others would think that Tang Li had been drugged. In this way, Ouyang Ningjing would become a target of suspicion. As long as a portion of the public suspected Ouyang Ningjing, her reputation as a girl would be ruined. In short, if she went to Medical City, Ouyang Ningjing, who originally had the upper hand in public opinion, would suffer. Ouyang Ningnua stared at Tang Zijin as his eyes flashed coldly. He had been in charge of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium for many years and had gone through numerous negotiations. The only people he'd lost to were Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi. He refused to believe that he'd lose to Tang Zijin this time. Chapter 641. Ouyang Ningnua thought it wouldn't hurt to yield to Tang Zijin this time. Thus, he avoided the issue. Your Excellency, clan head. This one traveled thousands of li to solve a problem. Let's turn big problems into small ones, and small ones into nothing. If we make a big fuss at Medical City, it won't do Cloud Realm Trade Consortium or the Tang clan any good, don't you think? I won't yield. Long Fei Yi said to Tang Zijin through ventriloquism. Tang Zijin said domineeringly, "We're only going to Medical City to find out the truth. How is that making a big fuss? Could it be that Sir Ouyang knows something?" Ouyang Ningnua was surprised. He'd already yielded, but Tang Zijin was still pressing him. Before coming to negotiate, he'd done his research on the Tang clan. From what he understood, the Tang clan had always kept a low profile, and Tang Zijin wasn't the type to stir up trouble. But he didn't have time to think. No matter what, he had to stop Tang Zijin. If he really did go to Medical City, he'd be beaten up by Ning Chung first no matter what the results were. Tang Zijin didn't give him any face even after he'd given in just then. How was he supposed to do that now? While Ouyang Ningnua was pondering, Tang Zijin heard another ventriloquism. Still not leaving? Tang Zijin translated, then said, "Sir Ouyang, the carriage has already been prepared. Please." Ouyang Ningnua was already riding a tiger and had no way to back down. He gave way to Tang Zijin and said, "Your Excellency, clan head, this matter has already caused an uproar. Medical City might not get involved. Do you have any other ideas? Why don't we discuss it in detail?" Tang Zijin was finally satisfied. He was about to speak when Long Fei's ventriloquism came again. He could only listen carefully and repeat, "My unworthy son was rude first. So how could this old man dare to have any thoughts? If the Hundredly Trade Consortium has any plans, feel free to speak." Tang Zijin mused that this didn't sound like Long Fei Ye's style at all, but there was no point in thinking too much about it. He'd already been reduced to a mouthpiece. Ouyang Ningnua only felt that this style of speech was familiar, but he couldn't put his finger on it. He sat down and pretended to drink tea, but was actually fighting for time to think. Tang Zijin had threatened him first, then tossed the initiative to him. How cunning. This logic was the same as bargaining. Tang Zijin had not revealed his trump card, but he had been testing his bottom line. Before he even finished his cup of tea, Tang Zijin was already urging him. Actually, it was the person behind the scenes who was urging him. "Young Master Ouyang, there are no outsiders here today. Let's not beat around the bush. If you have any requests, feel free to state them." Wasn't that what Ouyang Ningrua had said at the beginning? Ouyang Ningnua felt as if he had been slapped in the face by his own words. He really wanted to insist that Tang Li marry into the family, but judging from the current situation, he knew that if he mentioned the word marry into the family, Tang Zijin would definitely go to Medical City. If he didn't mention marrying into the Tang family, was he going to ask Ning Jing to marry into the Tang family? Ouyang Ningnua really wanted that cheap girl Ning Jing to marry into the Tang clan. For one thing, he could regain control of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, and for another, Ning Jing's skills would definitely make a name for herself in the Tang clan. But Ning Jing would rather die than marry into the Tang family. When that girl's temper flared up, even Ning Chung couldn't hold her back, much less him. Ouyang Ningnua was caught between a rock and a hard place. "Young Master Ouyang?" Tang Zijin urged again. Ouyang Ningnua feigned calmness as he looked at him. It was a while before he spoke. "Your Excellency, clan head, Ning Jing is one of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's executive directors. You know that as well. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium can't do without her." In other words, Ouyang Ning Jing wouldn't marry into the Tang family because she was in charge of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium couldn't fall into anyone else's hands. At this moment, Tang Zijin heard another ventriloquism. "Two." This was the same two that Han Yunqi had mentioned yesterday. Tang Zijin finally realized that the ventriloquist was Long Fei Yi, but Han Yunqi was the one who'd come up with the idea. Fortunately, Aunt Ru hadn't acted rashly. That girl's schemes were unfathomable. Tang Zijin quickly recovered his wits and smiled at Ouyang Ning Nua. Old man understands young Master Ouyang's meaning. But Tang Li is our Tang clan's successor. The Tang clan's future can't do without Tang Li. Ouyang Ning Nua was caught in a dilemma. Tang Zijin pretended to think for a while before he said, "Old man does have a plan. What does young Master Ouyang think of it?" "Your Excellency clan head, please speak," Ouyang Ning Nua said politely. "When a woman grows up, she'll marry. We'll have Ning Jing marry into our Tang clan. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and the Tang clan will sign an agreement that their eldest son will become the Tang clan's grandson and inherit the position of clan head. The second son will belong to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and inherit the position of director. What do you think?" Then the two of them, Ouyang Ning Nua probed. As long as they give birth to a second son, old man won't bother interfering in their affairs. Tang Zijin looked helpless. The more Ouyang Ning Nua thought about it, the more he found the idea to be ingenious. As long as her father-in-law, Tang Zijin, didn't make things difficult or interfere, Ning Jing would be no different from Tang Li marrying into the Tang clan. She could still stay in Cloud Realm Trade Consortium and keep Tang Li in check with her skills. The details of the banquet were up to the bride's side, so there was no need for Ouyang Ning Nua to tell them. By bringing it up on the spot, he was hinting to Tang Zijin that Cloud Realm Trade Consortium would put on a grand display. Thus, their betrothal gifts couldn't be shabby, or else they'd lose face for the Tang clan. As the wife of the clan head, Lady Tang understood the implications well. She lazily leaned to one side and asked a servant girl, "Is the pear blossom rain needles in the young master's hands?" "They've always been in the young master's hands," the servant girl replied. Lady Tang didn't say much beyond a sound of agreement. Ouyang Ning Nua was secretly delighted. Before he came, Ning Chang had told him that he could forego everything else but the pear blossom rain needles. Han Yunxi and Tang Li hid behind them and almost laughed out loud. It was true that the pear blossom rain needles were in Tang Li's hands, but he'd used them all up on his escape from the wedding. Tang Zijin might not know this, but Lady Tang was the clearest. Han Yunxi had a good impression of Lady Tang to begin with, but now she liked her even more. "Tang Li, your mother's so good," she said. Tang Li couldn't speak, but his face was full of pride. Long Fei Yi watched from the sidelines. It wasn't clear what he was thinking, but a faint trace of sadness rose to his lips. Ouyang Ning Nua was waiting for Lady Tang to bring up the dowry, but she didn't. Ouyang Ning Nua wished she wouldn't. He rose to his feet and said, "Leave the other trivial matters to the wedding nanny. It's getting late, so I'll take my leave now." Tang Zijin sighed. Tang Li had an engagement with Celestial Mountain's Tsang clan first. Now that something like this has happened, the Tang clan can only let the Tsang clan down. Ouyang Ning Nua sighed, as well to express his sympathy, but didn't voice his opinion. He'd leave the matter to the Tang clan and Tsang Chiozi to deal with. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium would never offend Tsang Chiozi. Farewell. Ouyang Ning Nua was in a rush to leave, but Lady Tang suddenly called him back. "Hold it." Ouyang Ning Nua grew apprehensive, afraid that the Tang clan would invite people from Celestial Mountain as well. But Lady Tang only said, "Sir Ouyang, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium shouldn't prepare any dowry for that girl Ning Jing either. Our Tang clan can afford to raise her, so we don't lack her things. As long as she's dressed up beautifully on the day of the wedding, that'll be enough, understood?" Han Yunxi and Tang Li both muffled their mouths to keep from laughing out loud. Lady Tang was too ruthless. Her words were so domineering. With Ouyang Ning Jing's personality, wouldn't she have brought enough dowry to show off her strength to her mother-in-law? Han Yunxi suddenly recalled a saying, "No matter how good a mother is, she'll never be a good mother-in-law." Ouyang Ning Nua's heart sank. He knew that this negotiation had failed. He'd lost again and failed to meet any of his expectations. He even began to doubt his own negotiating skills. Had his skills deteriorated because he hadn't negotiated for so long? Who knew how Ning Cheng would react when he heard the results? In any case, Han Yunxi and the rest emerged from the back of the guest hall in high spirits. This matter was basically a success. Han Yunxi was about to speak with Lady Tang when the silent Aunt Ru spoke up. she said. Chapter 642. While everyone was happy, Aunt Rue suddenly added, Faye, Lear's matters have come to an end. You haven't paid your respects to your mother in a long time, right? That one sentence instantly silenced everyone. Han Yunxi only knew that Long Fei Ye's birth parents were both members of the Tang clan. This was something he'd told her when they were still in the poison sect's forbidden grounds. She knew nothing else. Aunt Rue's words tugged at the heartstrings of everyone present. Their expressions varied as they harbored different thoughts. A complicated look flitted past Tang Zijin's eyes. He was about to speak when Long Fei Yi retorted, Who told you that Tang Li's matters were over? What kind of tone is that? Very well. You've grown up and your wings have hardened. Aunt Rue can't control you anymore, nor can she scold you. Is that so? Aunt Rue huffed. Before Han Yunxi showed up, Fei had always been polite to her and Tang Zijin. He'd never been so rude. Aunt Rue looked like she was flipping out at Long Fei Yi, but her eyes kept darting towards Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi had long gotten used to it. When they first met at the poison sect's forbidden grounds, she had a basic understanding of what kind of person Aunt Rue was. In a nutshell, she thought too highly of herself. Long Fei Yi simply ignored her, while Lung Long said to Tang Li, Find out who Tsang Chiozi sent down the mountain and personally apologize to him. Also, immediately announce your marriage with Ning Jing. The sooner the better. Aunt Rue had long gotten used to Long Fei Ye's indifference. She smiled coldly in her heart, confident that her question just then was enough to pique Han Yunxi's curiosity. Fei's birth parents had too many unspeakable secrets. She believed that no matter how much Fei doted on this woman, he wouldn't rashly tell her anything about his parents. Women were prone to jealousy and suspicion. The more they didn't know, the more suspicious they'd be. Once they suspected a secret, the misunderstanding would grow. With Fei's temper, he definitely didn't like women who pestered him endlessly. Aunt Rue was very satisfied with the foreseeable effect of her words. That's right. Announce the wedding as soon as possible to prevent Cloud Realm Trade Consortium from going back on their word. Tang Zijin was still preoccupied with Tang Li's affairs. Ouyang Ning Nua was easy to fool, but Ning Cheng and Ning Jing weren't easy to deal with either. If they brought the contract back and Ning Cheng went back on his word, their efforts today would be in vain, and it would be even more troublesome. Thus, they had to strike while the iron was hot. As soon as the Cloud Realm Trade Consortium members at the foot of the mountain retreated, they'd spread the news of the wedding and make it a reality. Sect Master Tang, you should be the one to make this announcement. You'd better reflect on yourself first, then give your son a good scolding to appease the public anger, Han Yunxi said indifferently. Tang Zijin nodded repeatedly. Yes, esteemed Wang Fei is smart. Worry flashed through Aunt Rue's eyes. She had a faint feeling that Tang Zijin had been bewitched by Han Yunxi. Sect Master Tang, we can't mess up the order of these two matters. We need to announce the wedding to the world first, then have Tang Li offer a humble apology. That way, Tang Li will have Cloud Realm Trade Consortium backing him up. Perhaps Tsang Chiozi will show some mercy then, Han Yunxi said seriously. She wasn't trying to curry favor with Tang Li, but hoping from the bottom of her heart that Tang Li could survive this ordeal. Tang Zijin's friendliness towards Han Yunxi was all an act, but his view of the woman had changed after this incident. How great would it be if Han Yunxi had no ties to the Shadow Clan? That very day, Tang Zijin used his status as the Tang Clan master to make a public announcement. First, he admitted that he was wrong for not teaching his son, then cursed Tang Li bitterly. Finally, he explained that Tang Li had done such a foolish thing because he loved and adored Ning Jing too much. Next, he declared that Tang Li was engaged to Celestial Mountain's Tsang clan, so the Tsang clan would be the ones to blame for such a thing. He was willing to accept any punishment from the Tsang clan, but he had to take responsibility for Ning Jing to the end. Ouyang Ning Nua hadn't even returned to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium before the announcement was made. It only took a single day for the news to spread throughout Cloud Realm continent. Ning Cheng was still in Western Liang's morning court when he received the news. His cold face instantly turned black, leaving all the civil and military officials trembling in fear. They had no idea what was wrong with him. Once court was over, Ning Cheng ordered coldly, "Tell Ning Nua not to return to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, but to come here directly. Have him explain things to Ning Jing himself. As soon as he gave the order, Ning Jing stormed in angrily and slammed the letter in her hands on the table. Big bro, let whoever agreed to have a child with him do it himself. I'm not having any. She had planned to have Tang Li marry into her family and put him under house arrest. But Ning Nuan not only didn't agree, he even wanted her to have a child. Why didn't he just die? If Ning Chung was standing in front of her right now, she'd definitely slap him a few times. Did that fellow's brain go bad because he hadn't done anything for so long? How could he agree to something like that? The Tang clan has already released the news. What else do you want? Ning Chung asked coldly. Although he wasn't satisfied with the contract Ning Nua had brought back, he was satisfied with just one thing. He was satisfied that Tang Zijin hadn't agreed to marry into her family. If Tang Zijin agreed to marry into the family, he would definitely become suspicious of this matter. Judging from the current situation, Tang Zijin and Long Fei probably didn't know each other, just as their investigations had shown. So what if the news has been released? Ning Jing's eyes flashed shrewdly. Big bro, why don't we kill Tang Li and shift the blame to the Tsang clan? In the future, you'll still be the one to decide on little sister's marriage. If she had to have a child, she'd rather give up the chance to kill Tang Li. Ning Chung looked at his little sister as a cold smile rose to his lips. A woman's heart was the most poisonous of all. He liked it. But now that things had come to this, he wasn't going to give up on the fat meat that was the Tang clan. He was looking forward to the pear blossom rain needles. You're underestimating Tsang Chiozi too much, Ning Chung said before waving a hand to dismiss Ning Jing. He leaned lazily against his chair and stretched out his legs on the table, his posture indolent yet domineering. Big bro. Ning Jing stomped her feet angrily. Ning Chung didn't even look at her. Get out. Big bro, I don't care. This matter, before Ning Jing could finish, Ning Chung cut her off with a cold voice. From now on, if anything happens to Tang Li, I'll blame it all on you. You'll be punished according to clan rules. Clan rules? The D clan only had one rule. Anyone who violated the clan elders would be expelled from the clan. Hadn't Ning Jing done everything so she could stay in the D clan for the rest of her life and be loyal to them? Once she was expelled, what was the point of living? Ning Jing didn't say a word. She stood there for a long time before turning to leave. Fine, she'd accept the marriage agreement. But whether or not she could bear a son depended on Tang Li's skills. Once Ning Jing was gone, Ning Chung took out a gold needle from his hairpin and toyed with it in his hands. It was certain that this needle belonged to Han Yunxi, but only Ning Chung himself knew where he'd gotten it. On the second day after news of the marriage between the Tang clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium spread, Tang Zijin found out that Tsang Chiozi hadn't left Celestial Mountain yet. Although it was much easier to descend the mountain, Tsang Chiozi didn't take the risk of descending after last winter's snow had sealed off many roads. Instead, he entrusted the marriage to Duanmu Yao, who'd long left the mountain, and said that she could make the decisions on behalf of the Tsang clan. Fei, Tsang Chiozi and Duanmu Yao are fooling around so openly. Are they trying to show off their strength to you? Tang Zijin asked. In terms of seniority, martial arts skills, and reputation, Tsang Chiozi couldn't compare to Kinzo, but he'd coveted Kinzo's position for a long time. Moreover, Duanmu Yao was Kinzo's favorite disciple. Once Tsang Chiozi and Duanmu Yao hooked up, half of Celestial Mountain would belong to the two of them. Even Long Fei Yi wouldn't be able to contend against them. Tang Li's marriage had caused a huge uproar, but Tsang Chiozi had publicly asked Duanmu Yao to handle it on his behalf. It was obvious that he wanted Long Fei Yi to know that he and Duanmu Yao were close. If this wasn't a show of strength, then was he showing off? Long Fei Yi nodded before asking Tang Li, "Is Duanmu Yao 18 yet?" "She's full. She's been full for a long time." Tang Li asked seriously, "What do you have in mind?" On the side, Han Yunqi immediately pricked up her ears to listen, but Long Fei Yi didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Go ask for punishment, but be careful. Tsang Chiozi isn't trying to show off, but borrows someone else's knife to kill him." After the Tang clan's announcement, Tsang Chiozi would be cursed by the people if he punished Tang Li severely. They'd call him narrow-minded and narrow-minded. But if he left the matter to Duanmu Yao, Tsang Chiozi could shirk all responsibility even if she ended up crippling Tang Li. Old man, let's go together. Tang Zijin grew nervous. Lady Tang stood up as well. Song Chiozi is too sinister. I'll go too. It's enough for old man to go. You don't even know martial arts, so what are you going to do? Tang Zijin asked unhappily. I know how to use assassination weapons. Lady Tang said righteously. If we bring the Tang clan's most powerful weapons, we won't be afraid no matter how many people Celestial Mountain has. Tang Zijin wanted to stop her again, but Lady Tang grabbed Aunt Ru's hand. You have to go too. Otherwise, they'll think there's no one left in the Tang clan and bully us again. Aunt Ru seemed to dread Lady Tang and only agreed with a single word. Although Tang Zijin was unhappy, he didn't stop her. Han Yunqi could tell that Lady Tang was dragging Aunt Ru away on purpose, but she didn't know why she was doing so. After making up his mind, Tang Li stripped off his clothes and tied a few thorns to his back. Then he walked down the mountain towards Duanmu Yaozin. With the three elders accompanying him, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi didn't have to worry about Tang Li. After sending off Tang Li and the others, Han Yunqi took Long Fei Yi's hand and asked, Duanmu Yao's already 18 years old. Her safety has nothing to do with you anymore, right? Long Fei Yi gave an affirmative answer. Han Yunqi was overjoyed. She took his hands and made him look at her. Long Fei Yi, from now onwards, before she could finish, Long Fei Yi interrupted her. This prince is only responsible for you. As he spoke, he seemed to be afraid that Han Yunqi wouldn't believe him, so he leaned down and planted a deep kiss on Han Yunqi's lips. Han Yunqi pursed her lips. She wanted to be more serious and domineering when she made her request, but in the end, she said, Give me another stamp. What? Long Fei Yi didn't understand what she meant. The wind whistled as he hugged her even tighter. Aunt Ru didn't understand Han Yunqi at all. Han Yunqi still hadn't asked Long Fei Yi about her provocation, much less Long Fei Yi's exceptions for Han Yunqi. Even if he couldn't answer, Long Fei Yi still hoped that Han Yunqi would care about him. But even without Aunt Ru's provocation, there was still a gap between them that neither of them could see. Could this gap be the last step of the 100 steps? Their lips still lingered on each other's lips as they fell silent. Suddenly, Han Yunqi turned around and leaned against Long Fei Yi's chest. What's wrong? He asked. I'm a little tired, Han Yunqi said mildly. Long Fei Yi picked her up without a word and carried her back to rest. How could she fall asleep with him by her bedside? She didn't like to think too much and liked to do things casually, but today, her heart was heavy. She closed her eyes and let her mind wander into the poison storage space and began to cultivate. The first step of the poison storage space allowed her to freely take in her own poison, as well as the most poisonous things in the world. She had already mastered it, and now was the crucial moment to unlock the second step. The second step was to resist enemies. Once she mastered it, she could freely take in any poison that threatened her. Han Yunqi didn't think that far ahead of the third step. First, the second step was 10 times harder than the first. Being able to master the second step was already hard enough, let alone the third step. Also, the third step was to plunder. She could take in all the poisons in the world. Han Yunqi didn't like it and didn't need it. So, her only wish now was to master the second step. As soon as Han Yunqi entered the poison storage space, it was as if she'd really fallen asleep. Long Fei tucked her in before leaving without a sound. While Aunt Ru wasn't here, he should go and pay his respects to his mother. Lady Tang had purposely led Aunt Ru away to urge him to go take a look. He'd forgotten how many years it had been since he'd paid his respects to his mother. His memory seemed to have stopped at the year she committed suicide. The Tang sect wasn't one of the 7 noble families, but rather the East Qin Shadow Guard. Strictly speaking, the Tang sect's status was far lower than the Bailey clans. But because his mother had obtained imperial father's favor and gave birth to him, the Tang sect's words carried more weight in front of him than the Bailey clans. The Tang sect was most famous for their hidden weapons, but they also had a secret art of poison. Like the 100 Poisons sect, the Tang sect's poison arts originated from the Poison sect. Because no one could take up the mantle, the Tang sect's poison branch gradually declined after the Poison sect was destroyed. His mother was in charge of the Tang sect's poison branch. When she learned that the perplexing butterfly illusion could rule the world, she spent her entire life searching for it, hoping to help Imperial Father recover East Qin. Unfortunately, before she could find the perplexing butterfly illusion, Imperial Father had already passed away. She placed all her hopes on him. Imperial Father's ambitions, her long-cherished wish, the Imperial family's revenge, and even the Tang sect's dream of becoming a noble family had all been placed on his shoulders. She'd given him the status of East Qin's Imperial Prince and helped him learn martial arts on Celestial Mountain. She'd nurtured the beauty's blood and arranged everything. Then, she'd said that she missed his Imperial Father. She'd left everything to him. She'd said that he would live on for her and his Imperial Father's sake. He had to live on with 2 lives to complete the mission they'd failed to complete. Then, right in front of him, she'd used a dagger to end her own life. He'd never understood love. That was the first time he'd understood that love could be so selfish. Long Fei silently walked through the forest, seemingly aimless. He soon arrived at the shady side of Divine Dragon Mountain. Tang Yuan was buried in a cave on the side of the mountain. In truth, this was a joint grave. His Imperial Father had been buried here first. In order to hide his identity, he hadn't even erected a tombstone. Now, only his Imperial Mother's tombstone was erected on the grave. Long Fei flew down from the cliff and stood in front of the grave with his hands clasped behind his back. He stood there for a long time. There was no sorrow or pain on his face, only his usual expressionless face. When his shoulders were strong enough to shoulder everything they'd done for him and his own dreams, he would no longer be angry when he faced them. His cold eyes were especially emotionless. He wasn't someone who liked to reminisce and didn't reminisce about the past. He stood there silently, not thinking about the past, only about the future. After a long time, he bowed 3 times and said, "Imperial Father, Imperial Mother, the Princess of Western Qin is mine. She's called Han Yunqi." He paused for a while and said, "This summer, I'll bring her to Celestial Mountain." After saying this, he didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. Summer would arrive in a little more than a month. By the time Long Fei returned, Han Yunqi was still sleeping. He acted as if nothing had happened as he sat by the bed, watching over her. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi slept all the way until the next day. As soon as she woke up, she saw Long Fei leaning against her bed, sound asleep. A careful look at his face revealed his tiredness. Han Yunqi's heart ached as she gently stroked his stubbly chin. At this moment, Chu Shifeng's anxious voice came from outside. "Your Highness, something's happened. Aunt Ru's in big trouble." Tang Li was going to apologize. Did Aunt Ru think that the trouble was not big enough? He actually crippled someone? Tang Zijin's announcement was wasted. What happened? Long Fei asked. This subordinate isn't sure either. I just received news from a flying pigeon that Tang Li and the rest are on their way back, Chu Shifeng reported honestly. Han Yunqi and Long Fei quickly washed up and tidied themselves up. As soon as they opened the door, Han Yunqi asked, "What do you mean crippled?" Chu Shifeng still shook his head. The letter only said that she crippled someone. Go ask immediately. Long Fei ordered unhappily. After Chu Shifeng left, Han Yunqi saw Long Fei's stern expression and pretended to be jealous. So nervous? Long Fei immediately grew serious. Tang Li will be very troublesome. And Han Yunqi asked sourly. This fellow loved to get jealous, but he didn't seem to like other people getting jealous. She wasn't childish enough to get jealous over something like this. But when it came to Duanmu Yao, she was childish and willful. She liked to see this icy, taciturn man rush to clarify things and explain himself. Long Fei. Long Fei. Why didn't I get to know you before Duanmu Yao did? If I knew you before, I'd never let you have a junior sister like her. Duanmu Yao probably came prepared. Long Fei was still very serious. Now Han Yunqi realized the gravity of the situation. You're saying she hurt herself on purpose? Long Fei nodded. Song Qiuzi had probably pushed Duanmu Yao forward to use her to punish Tang Li. But Duanmu Yao was no fool. Instead of whipping Tang Li and offending Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, she'd rather put on a show and let the Tang clan injure her instead. That way, the Tang clan would be the subject of ridicule again, while Tsang Chiozi would have even more reason to make things difficult for them. Duanmu Yao could also stay out of the matter without taking any responsibility. How sinister. Han Yunxi grew doubtful. Aunt Ru used assassination weapons? Did she cripple her hands or legs? What kind of weapons could cripple someone? Assassination weapons were either used for poisoning or to hit vital points. Han Yunxi couldn't imagine how they could be used to cripple someone. Long Fei didn't care how Duanmu Yao was crippled, but said thoughtfully, Aunt Ru wouldn't be so rash. When facing Han Yunxi, Aunt Ru's unreasonable tantrums were all an act. Long Fei knew full well how shrewd she was. Even if Duanmu Yao had come prepared, Aunt Ru wouldn't fall for a trap. While they were talking, Chu Shifeng arrived with definite news. Your Highness, Duanmu Yao's Dantian has been injured. Aunt Ru's needle struck her Dantian acupoint. The situation is very serious. We'll have to wait for the clan head and the rest to know the details. They're already on their way. Long Fei and Han Yunxi exchanged glances. You heard her Dantian, so how are you going to return it to her? Tang Zijin was about to die from anger. As he spoke, he didn't forget to shoot Tang Li a cold look. He wished he could kill this unfilial son with his eyes and end all troubles once and for all. If he had been obedient back then, he might have been able to hold a grandson now instead of having to deal with this huge pile of trouble. Neither Celestial Mountain nor Cloud Realm Trade Consortium was easy to deal with. Aunt Ru was rendered speechless by Tang Zijin's outburst. Enough. It's already happened, so what's the use of yelling at Iru? As I see it, that cheap girl deserved it. Who told her to curse Tang Li like that? She's so young with such a venomous mouth. Isn't she afraid of retribution? It was rare for Lady Tang to stand on the same side as Aunt Ru. She turned to Long Fei and said, Fei, it's a good thing you didn't agree to the marriage alliance back then. Otherwise, your mother would be so angry she'd come back to life. Enough. What do you know? You have long hair and short eyes. Tang Zijin was about to lose his mind. He didn't want to pay attention to any of the women in the room anymore. He looked seriously at Long Fei and asked, Fei, what do you think we should do about this? How are her injuries? What did she say? Long Fei asked. I'm not sure. Aunt Ru used a meteor dart. Duanmu Yao spat up multiple mouthfuls of blood on the spot. She said this wasn't over yet. Old man wanted to explain, but that damned girl left too quickly. She probably went to treat her injuries, Tang Zijin replied. Meteor dart. Long Fei muttered to himself before asking, how far away was it? Meteor dart was extremely fast, so its power was immense as well. If it was used at close range, the consequences would be unthinkable. Tang Zijin understood meteor dart even better than Long Fei. The scene had been so chaotic and sudden that he didn't have time to see clearly before Duanmu Yao left. About 10 paces, Aunt Ru added in a low voice. Long Fei and Tang Zijin exchanged glances. 10 paces. Duanmu Yao would have been seriously injured at that distance. Long Fei fell silent for a while before saying, prepare to face Celestial Mountain head-on. And also, report this to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium immediately. Just say that Duanmu Yao spoke rudely and insulted Ningjing, so the Tang clan accidentally injured her. They could only win over Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's support first. As for how Duanmu Yao would react, they could only wait and see. Aunt Ru didn't seem to have done it on purpose, nor was it likely that Duanmu Yao would take such a huge risk against the Tang clan. Han Yunxi only stared at Aunt Ru. Could this really have been an accident? Was it really an accident? Chapter 645. Was Duanmu Yao's actions a conspiracy or an accident? Let's see how Duanmu Yao will deal with the Tang clan. By now, news of Tang Li's humble apology had spread like wildfire. The cursed Tang Li had earned more or less sympathy and forgiveness. Some even said that he was a responsible man. Han Yunxi heard the reports from the servants and sighed with emotion. What's wrong with this world? If Tang Li really did something so humiliating, she'd never treat him as a friend again. She didn't know what the people outside were thinking, but some of them actually forgave Tang Li inside the room. Everyone was still sitting. No one blamed Aunt Ru anymore, but waited for news from Duamu Yao's side. If her injuries were light, there might be room to turn the situation around. If they were serious, then the Tang clan would be offending old Kinzo instead of Zhangqiuzi. The wait was long and arduous. An entire night passed without news. Lady Tang stretched lazily. Everyone, go rest. If it's a blessing, it's not a disaster. If it's a disaster, we can't avoid it. She'd hardly finished speaking when Chu Shifeng rushed in. Your Highness, there's a letter from old Kinzo. Tang Zijin's heart trembled with fear. So fast. Duanmu Yao must have told on us. Lady Tang said hatefully. But Chu Shifeng only explained, it's not for the Tang clan, but for His Highness. A letter from old Kinzo to Long Fei Yi? A coincidence? Or did old Kinzo find out about Long Fei Ye's relationship with the Tang clan? How did he know? The atmosphere grew tense as everyone stared at the letter in Chu Shifeng's hands, their hearts trembling with fear. No one noticed the satisfied smile in Aunt Ru's eyes. Long Fei Yi was still calm as he slowly opened the letter. No one else dared to approach, but Han Yunqi stood by his side to read with him. As she read, her face grew gloomy. What's going on? Tang Zijin couldn't help but ask. His original plan was to leave Long Fei an escape route at Celestial Mountain. If he ended up hurting Long Fei instead, how was he supposed to face his dead little sister? Han Yunqi returned to her seat in silence. Long Fei turned to look at her. A helpless smile flitted across his lips. He didn't say anything and just tossed the letter to Tang Zijin. The moment Tang Zijin received the letter, everyone gathered around him. Aunt Ru was the last to lean over. She seemed to know the contents of the letter and was just pretending to read it. Unfortunately, Long Fei Ye's attention was all on Han Yunqi, and he didn't notice her. Tang Zijin and the others only saw the first part of the content. Fortunately, his injuries aren't serious. He can still be saved. Tang Zijin sighed as he watched. Tang Li exhaled deeply. Aunt Ru, it's a good thing you didn't hit him too hard. Otherwise, the meteor dart would have been enough to make her suffer. Lady Tang exhaled as well. Duamu Yao's probably busy treating her injuries. Zijin, we have to announce the news before she does. Mother, find someone to talk to Ouyang Ningjing and have her denounce Duamu Yao. Then we'll apologize and mediate, Tang Li said hastily. After this incident, everyone had become experts at public relations. By now, Tang Zijin had finished reading the rest of the letter. Duamu Yao needs someone to help treat her injuries, he said. Tang Li and the rest looked over anxiously at his words. After reading the rest of the letter, Chu Shifeng was the first to look at Long Fei Yi. Everyone else followed suit. Old man Kinzo wrote that Duanmu Yao had suffered internal injuries and needed someone with strong internal energy to treat her. He told Long Fei Yi to find Duanmu Yao immediately. He had to treat her injuries and take good care of her. He had to find the person who hurt her and take revenge. As soon as the snow melted, he had to bring her back to Celestial Mountain to recover. Although it was written in words, the 3 words, must, made it so that everyone who read the letter could clearly sense the Sword Sect Master's commanding tone. They could also clearly sense the Sword Sect Master's love for Duanmu Yao. Long Fei Yi didn't owe Duanmu Yao anything. Old man Kinzo was being too biased. By the tea table, Han Yunqi was sitting with a serious expression while Long Fei stood in front of her. Although his back was tall and imposing, he still looked like someone who'd committed a crime and was waiting to be interrogated. Chu Shifeng couldn't help but gulp. Based on his experience, esteemed Wang Fei was truly unhappy. The problem was very serious. Tang Zijin and the rest of his family exchanged glances with complicated expressions. Aunt Ru stood on one side, staring cold at Han Yunqi with disdain and loathing in her eyes. She really didn't understand what right this damned girl had to throw a tantrum at Fei. Duamu Yao was deeply doted on by old man Kinzo and had the skills to hook up with Zhangqiuzi. In the future, Celestial Mountain would be her world. What right did Han Yunqi have to compare to her? What right did she have to be jealous? In the silence of the room, they couldn't see Long Fei Ye's expression. All they could see was Han Yunqi's cold little face, which made everyone feel uneasy. Tang Zijin was the first to break the silence with a sigh. Thank goodness, thank goodness. It looks like old man Kinzo doesn't know anything. Duamu Yao only said she was injured, but but didn't say how. Aunt Ru hastened to add, Duamu Yao came to help Sangchiozi this time. She wouldn't be stupid enough to tell old man Kinzo. Those two elders of Celestial Mountain are still at odds with each other. Tang Zijin slapped his forehead. That's right, that's right. It was a false alarm. A false alarm. Old man Kinzo spends most of his time in closed-door cultivation and rarely comes out. He wouldn't know unless someone went to tell on her. Why didn't he think of that just then? As long as they didn't offend old man Kinzo, he wouldn't have to worry so much. With Duanmu Yao in the way, who would dare to tell on her? As I see it, we're all overthinking things. Aunt Ru looked like she'd been wrongly accused, while Lady Tang laughed. Iru, you should have heard her a few more times if you knew this would happen. Lady Tang really didn't like Duanmu Yao, and wished she'd be the one to hurt her. At this moment, Long Fei Yi slowly turned to look at her, causing her to shut her mouth resentfully. Fei, you should make a trip there as soon as possible. A long night is fraught with dreams. If Duanmu Yao's injuries worsen and we can't hide the truth, the Tang clan will be in real trouble, Aunt Ru coaxed. Long Fei Yi only pretended not to hear. Cold, he said to Tang Zijin, this matter doesn't involve my master, so it's not a big problem. There are many matters to attend to in Yaoshui, so I'll take my leave now. He's leaving? You're really not going to save Duanmu Yao? Tang Zijin asked in alarm. It has nothing to do with you. Hurry up and take care of the Tang clan's troubles. Long Fei Ye's tone was cold and commanding. Everyone present besides Han Yunxi could tell that Long Fei Yi was speaking to Tang Zijin as the East Qin Crown Prince. Taking care of the Tang sect was Tang Zijin's responsibility as the sect master. It was also his responsibility as the head of the East Qin Imperial Shadow Guards. He restrained his emotions and replied to Long Fei Yi, Don't worry. Aunt Ru stood on the sidelines, her expression like a storm. Unfortunately, Tang Zijin had no room to speak, much less her. Still, she knew that things wouldn't end so easily with Duanmu Yao's personality. Long Fei Yi looked at Han Yunxi and didn't say a word. Instead, he held out his hand. Han Yunxi's emotions were written all over her face, but she still gave him her hand and rose to her feet. Just like that, the two of them walked out the door with their fingers interlocked. Chu Shifeng gave a start before chasing after them. He can't do this. Aunt Ru muttered next to Tang Zijin. Think of a way to persuade him. Even if he goes to check on Duanmu Yao's injuries, it'll give us some assurance. Aya, so what if he doesn't go? Don't worry about Fei taking care of things. If he dares not go, then he must have the capital to back it up. Lady Tang relaxed after confirming that the Tang clan wasn't in danger. She added, even if he does go, he should delay it for a few days so Duanmu Yao can suffer more. Tang Li muttered to himself, with sister-in-law here, my big brother can't go even if he wants to. Mind your own business. Tang Zijin reprimanded him. Tang Li gave Lady Tang a look before mother, and son quickly slipped away. Seeing that no one was around, Aunt Ru muttered, aren't you going to use this chance to put pressure on Han Yunxi? The situation in the West is still a mess, so don't add to Fei's troubles. Chapter 646. A carriage was parked in the quiet mountain forest. An outsider would only think that this carriage was spacious, but an expert would be able to tell that this was no ordinary carriage. This was a carriage with 1 or 2 horses, which meant that there were 4 horses driving the same carriage. This was the emperor's carriage, and not just anyone could use such a standard. The body of the carriage was made of precious Phoebe Jinan wood, and the color was mesmerizing and full of spiritual energy. Even collectors would find it difficult to make Phoebe Jinan wood ornaments so uniform, but this large carriage was able to do it. There were no intricately carved beams or painted rafters on the carriage, nor were there any signs of the owner's identity. There were only a few simple carvings, which were not conventional and showed off their temperament. The 4 windows of the carriage were wrapped in exquisite golden silk, completely covering the inside of the carriage. It invisibly emitted a mysterious aura that made people want to peek inside. The carriage had 4 wheels, which were large and thick, and had excellent shock absorption. It must be mentioned that the body of the carriage was extremely large, and could fit 4 or 5 people at the same time without feeling crowded. Just like the simple exterior, the interior of the carriage was also very simple, but the style was completely different. It was so extravagant that it made people's hair stand up. There was only one spacious warm couch in the carriage, and it was covered with a very rare natural purple fox fur. The warm couch could be used to sit, lean, or lie down. There were 2 golden pillows on the left and right of the couch for leaning. In the middle was a small square table made of Phoebe Genon wood, and on top of it was a roux kiln tea set. In front of the warm couch was a bronze stove for heating purposes. The design was exquisite, and the workmanship was exquisite. When it burned, there was no smoke, not to mention charcoal. The interior of the carriage was covered with a tiger skin carpet, which was extremely luxurious. This was His Highness Duke of Qin's personal carriage, a place that countless women dreamed of, not to mention sitting on it. Even just looking inside the carriage was enough to make one have no regrets in life. At this time, Han Yunqi was sitting in the carriage, sulking. She sat on the right side of the warm couch, leaning on a high pillow and looking down at her feet. Her unhappiness was written all over her face, and she looked like she wanted strangers to disturb her. Long Fei Yi sat on the left side, silently looking at her. His brows were slightly furrowed, and his deep, dark eyes revealed a bit of helplessness, a bit of doting, and a bit of worry. In short, he didn't know what to do with this woman. There was almost nothing in the world that was difficult for him. But after a while, Han Yunqi didn't pursue the matter. Instead, she intoned, "Let's go back." Long Fei Yi gave a start. He looked at her as if he wanted to speak, but stopped himself. After a while of silence, he saw that Han Yunqi didn't ask for his opinion, so he simply said, Then he called for the driver to set off. Han Yunqi immediately turned to look at him, only to see him staring out the window with a stiff expression. Her brows were creased into a frown. She wanted to say something, but in the end she shook her head and looked out the window as well. After a long while, Long Fei Yi glanced at her. Seeing her unmoved expression, his handsome brows creased as well. His eyelids drooped as he steeped the tea without making a sound. Usually, he handed her the first cup, but now he was pouring it for himself. The wheels of the carriage grew louder, breaking the silence of the forest and making the interior of the carriage seem even quieter. In the middle of the warm couch was a small tea table. Long Fei Yi leaned against the table and drank his tea expressionlessly. Han Yunqi sat to the side, far away from him. Just like that, they remained silent for the entire morning. The atmosphere in the carriage was so oppressive that it was hard to breathe. Even the driver sitting outside could feel the immense pressure. He carefully drove the carriage, afraid that he would make a mistake and become His Highness Duke of Qin's punching bag. It was already past noon when the carriage arrived at the county seat. The bustle outside made the carriage even quieter. This kind of atmosphere made one feel uneasy. Finally, the driver couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Your Highness, would you like to arrange lunch?" After all, His Highness Duke of Qin could never bear to let esteemed Wang Fei go hungry. He had never let esteemed Wang Fei go hungry on a long journey. What kind of major event had happened that made His Highness forget about eating? "What do you want to eat?" Long Fei Yi asked indifferently. "Anything," Han Yunqi replied. Long Fei Yi didn't ask any more questions. He instructed the driver, "Find a clean place." Then, the two of them fell into silence again. Before long, the driver found the most expensive restaurant in the county seat and booked a private room. "Your Highness, it's ready. The first room on the right on the second floor. The waiter is already waiting there." Long Fei Yi stood up and was about to get off when Han Yunqi's gaze finally fell on him. She was probably tormenting him on purpose. After he got off the carriage, she calmly said, "Long Fei Yi." Normally, he would respond with an lift the curtain, and carry her down. But right now, he only asked indifferently, "What is it?" Seeing this, the coachman didn't know whether or not he should come over and wait on them. Just as she was about to get out of the car, Long Fei suddenly hugged her waist from behind and pulled her into his embrace. Hee, you're not angry anymore? Han Yunqi shook her head. Why is that? Long Fei asked with interest. Unexpectedly, Han Yunqi said, Long Fei, I'm scared. She turned around and looked at him seriously. Long Fei, I'm scared. I'm scared that no matter how hard I try, I won't be able to erase your past. I won't be able to be your one and only. Tell me, what should I do? She had always been a person who didn't believe in heaven or earth. She only believed in herself. No matter how difficult it was, as long as she wanted to do it, she would definitely be able to do it. However, she couldn't do anything about his past. She couldn't participate in the things that he had experienced. She couldn't stop him from doting on others. How helpless. Long Fei's heart trembled slightly. He couldn't help but hug Han Yunqi tighter, wishing that he could rub her into his body. This was probably the longest confession he had ever heard. She let him hug her tightly and said frankly, I mind a lot. Long Fei, what should we do? If she was facing someone else, perhaps she would be able to get past this hurdle in her heart. After all, she was such a carefree woman. However, facing him, she couldn't convince herself to ignore and forget him. Thinking about it, she would feel terrible and suffocated. He gently patted her back and said mildly, Are you that greedy? Han Yunqi replied sadly, Yes, unfortunately. I can't be greedy anymore. Long Fei wanted to laugh, but his heart ached at the same time. He'd never seen Han Yunqi so despondent before. He buried his head by her ear and was practically biting it as he said word by word, Han Yunqi, remember this? This prince will only have you in this lifetime. This prince will only serve you, no matter if it's in the past or in the future. There will only be you and no one else. As he spoke, he was about to back away, but he closed in again. He held her face in his hands domineeringly and planted a fierce kiss on her lips. This was their exclusive way of sealing a contract. Han Yunqi's entire world lit up. She was no longer cautious and was almost instantly full of vigor. She regained her original carefree and uninhibited nature, daring to love and hate. She pressed Long Fei's face with both hands and began to ask for details. What did your master order you to do previously? I don't remember. Long Fei was telling the truth. How could he remember such a thing? Think about it. Han Yunqi's heart was itching. If she didn't ask clearly, she wouldn't be able to sleep. It's about the same as in that letter. Long Fei really didn't want to think about it. After confirming that he had really forgotten, Han Yunqi was very satisfied. It's good that you've forgotten. After hearing these words, Long Fei suddenly realized that this woman had set a trap for him. If he had really remembered something just now, the consequences would have been very serious. Then how did you reject it? Han Yunqi continued to ask. I obeyed in public, but opposed in private. He had never disobeyed any orders in front of his master, but in private, he rarely obeyed orders. For example, when his master ordered him to take care of Duanmu Yao until she turned 18, his care was only to ensure that she didn't die. Didn't Duanmu Yao complain? Han Yunqi was puzzled. Long Fei shook his head. Han Yunqi asked again, why? I don't know. Long Fei was getting impatient. Han Yunqi knew when to stop and didn't pursue the matter. She was more concerned about another matter. Why does Elder Kinzo dote on Duanmu Yao so much? It's not just because of her talent, right? In terms of talent and level of martial arts, Long Fei was miles ahead of Duanmu Yao. Elder Kinzo should dote on Long Fei more. Why would he order Long Fei to serve Duanmu Yao? There must be a secret behind this. There were many things that Long Fei wanted to tell Han Yunqi when they went to Sky Mountain. Now that she had asked, he didn't intend to hide it any longer. He had already steeled his heart to take her to Sky Mountain, so there was nothing to hide. Duanmu Yao's talent is very similar to my late Shermu's. Shermu was also Master's disciple. Long Fei sighed. She was Master's first disciple. It's just that this isn't known to the public. Master didn't accept any disciples because of Shermu's wife. Duanmu Yao and I went to Sky Mountain together. That day, Elder Kinzo was in a good mood because of Duanmu Yao and even accepted me as his disciple. Han Yunqi was very surprised. The outside world had always said that Long Fei Yi and Duanmu Yao were exceptionally talented, so Elder Kinzo made an exception and accepted them as his disciples. She hadn't expected the truth to be like this. In other words, it was all thanks to Duanmu Yao that Long Fei Yi had joined Tianshan Kinzo. Duanmu Yao doesn't know about this herself. Master only told me. This has to do with his reputation. Before Long Fei Yi could finish, Han Yunqi said, "Don't worry, it'll be kept a secret." Although Cloud Realm Continent's culture was more civilized, the world didn't tolerate master and disciple relationships. Elder Kinzo was a man of virtue and prestige, so he would never do something so immoral. Once news of this got out, it wouldn't just destroy Elder Kinzo's reputation, but all of Sky Mountain itself. No one would dare to send their children up the mountain then. Shermu's wife died from qi deviation due to the reverse flow of true qi. Long Fei Yi said. After Shermu's wife passed away, Master's hair turned white overnight, and he lost his mind. A few years ago, he was still under control, but over the past few years, he's fluctuated between good and bad. Chapter 648. The matter of the seal was a long story and involved many people. Long Fei Yi had been forced to remove the seal in the abyss of the medicine-requesting cave. Although he had saved Gu Beiwei, he had suffered internal injuries. He had only just recovered a few days ago. Han Yunqi knew nothing about this matter. As for whether Gu Beiwei had noticed, she wasn't sure. However, Gu Beiwei was a smart person. Even if he had noticed, he might not have asked. The seal on Long Fei Ye's body was called the Love-Devouring Seal. It had been placed on him 2 years after he had become Kinzo's disciple. Tianshan Kinzo had countless sword techniques, but only one set of internal strength techniques. It was called the Nirvana Mantra. Anyone who practiced the Tianshan sword techniques had to practice the Nirvana Mantra. Anyone who practiced the Nirvana Mantra had to accept a seal to permanently seal away the negative qi in their body. When Long Fei Yi had first joined the sect, Kinzo had placed a seal on him to seal away the negative qi in his body. Then, he had begun to teach him how to cultivate internal strength. Long Fei Yi was extremely talented and diligent. In just 1 year, he had completed 50% of his internal strength, setting a new record in Tianshan Kinzo. However, one day, when he was learning sword techniques from Kinzo, the seal on his body was suddenly broken. The internal strength he had cultivated for a year leaked out and disappeared. Kinzo was shocked and continued to place a seal on Long Fei Yi. Unfortunately, the seal was still broken a year later. Long Fei Yi had wasted another year of his cultivation. Kinzo didn't understand why either. All he knew was that Long Fei Yi wasn't suited to practice the Nirvana Mantra. Once he couldn't practice the Nirvana Mantra, he was destined to be unable to practice sword techniques. In other words, Long Fei Yi had no reason to stay in Tianshan Kinzo. It wasn't easy for her to become Kinzo's disciple. Moreover, it was a closed-door disciple. How could Tang Yuan miss this opportunity? She secretly hoped that her son would one day become the successor of Tianshan Kinzo and take control of Wulin. Tang Yuan told Elder Kinzo about Long Fei Ye's past and took out the East Qin imperial family's love-devouring seal, which had never been used before. She begged Elder Kinzo to use it to seal Long Fei Yi. The Lustbite seal was the most precious treasure of the East Qin imperial family. Only those with limitless internal strength could activate it. Anyone who was sealed by this seal would be able to gather qi into strength. Outside of the body's true qi, all the unrighteous qi would form a powerful force called the Lustbite force. The Lustbite power was an evil power. If one couldn't control it, one would suffer from qi deviation. No one knew if it was serious. However, this power would always be sealed under the Lustbite seal. Unless the seal was removed, it would be impossible to use it. When Elder Kinzo placed the seal on Long Fei Ye's body, he had spent a lot of effort to give him 3 chances to remove the seal on his own. Moreover, these chances were temporary. A price had to be paid to remove the seal, and each time the price was greater than the last. That time at Medicine Requesting Cave was Long Fei Ye's first time removing the seal on his own. It had to be said that the price had been steep. Removing the seal required the person who'd placed it. In this world, Only Elder Kinzo could undo Long Fei Ye's love-devouring seal. Kinzo had once said that Long Fei Ye would never remove the seal unless he could fully control the lust-bite force. The lust-bite seal had a taboo rule. Its user had to be a virgin. Otherwise, the seal would self-destruct and the lust-bite force would vanish within 3 days. After being injured by Tsangqiuzi last time, Long Fei Ye's internal energy had not only recovered, but improved with each passing day. He was confident that he could control the lust-bite force. His trip to Celestial Mountain this time wasn't just to fulfill his promise to Han Yunqi. According to his plans, he was supposed to head to Celestial Mountain after stabilizing the western regions. This year, Elder Kinzo had gone into closed-door cultivation frequently while Tsangqiuzi had turned Tianshan Kinzo into a foul atmosphere. Moreover, he'd sent people to investigate Elder Kinzo's daily life multiple times, as if he suspected something. It was time for Long Fei Ye to get involved in Celestial Mountain's internal affairs. He needed the lust-bite force to deal with Tsangqiuzi and his accomplices. How was he supposed to explain this to Han Yunqi? How much could he explain? Long Fei Ye was still hesitating when the driver called from outside. "Your Highness, esteemed Wang Fei, please go upstairs for dinner." The driver was a dutiful servant, but he was worried about his master's stomachs. If this dragged on any longer, they might as well eat dinner instead. "Let's get off the carriage." Long Fei Ye stopped hesitating. One day, he'd take this woman to pay respects to Imperial Father and Mu Fei. Then he'd tell her everything about East Qin, including the past she'd never been a part of. While other couples quarreled at the head of the bed and made up at the end, Long Fei Ye and Han Yunqi quarreled and made up in the carriage. When Han Yunqi saw the delicious vinegar cabbage on the table upstairs, she almost laughed out loud. Long Fei Ye, on the other hand, was very calm. He gave the driver a cold glance without a word. The driver had no idea where he'd gone wrong, so he didn't dare to ask His Highness Duke of Qin. Instead, he cautiously asked Han Yunqi, "Esteemed Wang Fei, shall we begin to order?" Han Yunqi said, "No need. Just bring the rice and a pot of tea." The driver was even more puzzled. He snuck a glance at His Highness Duke of Qin and saw that he didn't have any objections, so he did as he was told. Just like that, Han Yunqi and Long Fei ended up in the most expensive private room of the most expensive restaurant in the county. They ate a meal of white rice paired with vinegar-stewed cabbage. The driver uncle who couldn't figure it out peeked in from outside the door and saw that His Highness Duke of Qin didn't move his chopsticks much. It seemed like he didn't like sour food, but esteemed Wang Fei kept forcing him to eat. Multiple times, she put food in his mouth, but he still obediently ate. It had to be said that the driver almost didn't recognize His Highness Duke of Qin after seeing this scene. Who would have thought that Cloud Realm Continent's coldest monarch would dote on his wife so much? He was completely at her mercy. A meal of vinegar cabbage made Han Yunqi forget all her unhappiness. On the way back to Yaoshui, she slept peacefully in Long Fei Ye's arms while cultivating the second level of the poison storage space. A few days later, they arrived at a side courtyard in Yaoshui and were surprised to see Duanmu Yao sitting by herself on the front steps. She seemed to be waiting for them to come back. How did she find this place? What was she doing here? Duanmu Yao was dressed in a spotless white muslin gown with a bright red waistcoat. Her entire person emanated an indescribable air of immortality. She sat there hugging her knees, looking both lovely and pitiful. Anyone who saw her would stop to take a second look. Long Fei Ye glanced at her with a hint of impatience in his eyes. Han Yunqi's face turned black as she glared at Long Fei Ye. She knows about this side courtyard too? Long Fei Ye's side courtyards were spread all over the world, but not everyone knew about them. Someone must have leaked the information. Have Chu Shifeng look into it later, Long Fei Ye said. Now Han Yunqi grew serious. Could it be there's a spy? Who could have known about the side courtyard in Yaoshui and leaked the information to Duanmu Yao? Go to the northern suburbs. Send someone to pick up Gu Beiwei, Long Fei Ye said. Long Fei Ye had another estate in the northern suburbs, so Han Yunqi decided to have Duanmu Yao wait here. The driver was about to turn around when someone suddenly shouted from behind. Han Yunqi, are you in the carriage? Old uncle, esteemed Wang Fei is in the carriage, right? This voice, it's so familiar. Han Yunxi didn't even need to look to know that it was Mu Linger. Truly, an awn had fallen into the eye of a needle. What a coincidence. That damned girl couldn't have arrived earlier or later, but now of all times. If Han Yunxi remembered correctly, this wasn't the first time Mu Ling had ruined her plans. If Mu Ling wasn't Han Yunxi's cousin, what would have happened to her? Suspense. Han Yunxi peeked through the window and saw that Duanmu Yao had already stood up and was walking over. Mu Ling was riding a horse alone and had just arrived. When she saw Long Fei Ye's carriage, her attention was completely focused on it, so she hadn't noticed Duanmu Yao standing at the gate. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Ye didn't say anything. The driver smiled and said, "Miss Ling His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei aren't in the carriage. They haven't come back yet." Then Gu. Mu Ling almost blurted out the name Gu, but she stopped herself in time. "Then what about Gu Beiwei? Is he here?" Without waiting for the driver to reply, she asked, "Also, is Old Man Pill Fiend here?" The driver was anxious to help his master get rid of the trouble, so he nodded. "They're all here. They're all here. Quickly go in. This old servant still has matters to attend to, so I'm in a hurry to leave." Mu Ling was in a hurry to find the Qi brothers she'd been thinking about day and night, but when she turned around, she was shocked to see Duanmu Yao standing there. Duanmu Yao's figure flashed to the front of the carriage. She smiled. "Uncle Gao, are you going to pick up my senior brother?" "Miss Duanmu, what are you doing here?" Uncle Gao was the first to see Duanmu Yao, but he feigned shock. He'd served His Highness Duke of Qin for many years and had traveled extensively with him. Naturally, he understood this junior sister of his well. "I have an urgent matter to discuss with my senior brother. If you're going to pick him up, I'll go with you." Duanmu Yao prepared to board the carriage. Uncle Gao hurriedly stopped her. "No, no. His Highness and esteemed Wang Fei are out and not in Yaoshui. This old servant is in a hurry to see a vet. These 4 horses are all sick." Mu Ling was gullible, but Duanmu Yao wasn't. She looked at the 4 horses and couldn't see anything wrong with them. She was determined to believe that Uncle Gao was going to pick up Duanmu Yao. If her senior brother hadn't needed the carriage, Uncle Gao wouldn't have casually taken it out. After all, this carriage was her senior brother's favorite, and he'd never let anyone touch it. Even she, who'd been his junior sister for so many years, had taken many carriages with him. She'd also taken many of the Duke of Qin's private carriages, but she'd never taken this one. In truth, she didn't have to make things difficult for Uncle Gao. She could have just followed him in secret and found her senior brother. But she didn't want to miss this opportunity. She wanted to sit in this carriage, lean against the high pillow he always leaned on, taste the black tea he drank every day, and feel his scent. It had been far too long since she'd seen him. She missed his appearance and his voice so much that she was about to go crazy. "Where's the vet?" Duanmu Yao asked seriously. "In the south of the city," Uncle Gao replied offhandedly. "I happen to be heading south as well. Give me a ride." Duanmu Yao wanted to board the carriage again. The driver tried to stop her, but Duanmu Yao discreetly pushed his hand away. Mu Ling wanted to stop her as well, but Duanmu Yao suddenly jumped into the carriage and lifted the curtains. She was stunned, because inside the carriage, Chapter 649. The moment Duanmu Yao lifted the curtains, she was so shocked that she couldn't make a sound. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't move her eyes away. It was as if she had been petrified, standing motionless in front of the carriage. Her hands were tightly gripping the curtains. Uncle Gao glanced into the carriage, then immediately turned back. His expression was one of amazement. Although he had heard about it before, this was the first time he had seen it with his own eyes. Reality proved that there was a huge difference between seeing with one's own eyes and hearing with one's own ears. Mu Linger had wanted to pull Duanmu Yao down, but when she saw the situation, she walked over suspiciously. She took a look, then immediately turned back like Uncle Gao. Her face instantly turned red, and she didn't know what to do. Heavens, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were in the carriage. Heavens, the 2 of them were actually kissing. Heavens, Duanmu Yao had already lifted the curtains, but they were still kissing so passionately, so selflessly. Long Fei was casually leaning back on the high pillow, Han Yunqi's entire body pressed against his. Her arms were wrapped around his neck, and his arms were wrapped around her waist. The two of them were so close together. As they kissed, Long Fei actually lifted his slender legs and wrapped them around Han Yunqi's legs, completely trapping her on his body. Duanmu Yao witnessed this scene with her own eyes. She could clearly hear the sound of her heart being flung to the ground, shattering into pieces. How could this be? How could this be? How could she forget such a scene? She wouldn't be able to forget it for the rest of her life. She couldn't see Han Yunqi's expression, but she could see Long Fei's lowered eyelids as he kissed Han Yunqi in a delirious frenzy. Greed, infatuation, passion, and unable to stop. His chiseled face, his handsome features, his natural domineering aura, and his manly wildness in the midst of delirium. It was hard to imagine what it would feel like to be under his delights. At this very moment, wasn't Han Yunqi bearing all of his weight? His dominance, his wildness. Only God knew how intense his kiss was. Han Yunqi made muffled sounds, as if she was protesting, but also as if she was satisfied. He liked the sound of her voice and deepened the kiss. But to Duanmu Yao's ears, that ambiguous sound was ear-piercing. Her hands were trembling, her heart was trembling, and her entire body was trembling. She knew that she couldn't continue watching, or she would definitely go crazy. However, she couldn't take her eyes off her. She was afraid that she would miss it. She was afraid that she didn't know how much love and affection Han Yunqi had received from Long Fei. Why? Why did Han Yunqi get it? What was so good about Han Yunqi? What is Long Fei like about Han Yunqi? Let me lie down for a while. Be good. Long Fei's voice was gentle, unlike his earlier ferocious state. Han Yunqi's heart softened so easily when it came to him. She gently stroked his back and realized that it was drenched in sweat. She couldn't help but chuckle. "What are you laughing at?" he asked. "You're sweating just like that," she said frankly. What she meant was, Long Fei propped himself up and looked at her seriously with furrowed brows. "Just how bad are you?" Han Yunqi felt very innocent. She naturally thought that way. She couldn't be blamed. She retorted, "How am I bad? What are you thinking about again?" Unexpectedly, Long Fei lowered his head and bit her ear, whispering, "When this prince has some free time, he will know just how bad you are." Finally, Han Yunqi's ears started to heat up. Before long, her ears and face were completely red. Of course, she knew what he meant. So, he was thinking the same thing. By the time Han Yunqi and Long Fei were done tidying up and sitting down, half an incense stick had already passed. They didn't get off the carriage and ignored Duanmu Yao even more. Long Fei said, "Uncle Gao, why aren't we leaving?" Uncle Gao hurried over to drive the carriage. At this time, Duanmu Yao finally recovered from her grief and despair. She suddenly stood up and spread her arms in front of the carriage to stop it. If she couldn't have it, then Han Yunqi shouldn't think about getting it either. Even if she got it, she wanted Han Yunqi to lose it. "Senior brother, Master told me to look for you. Have you received his letter?" Duanmu Yao asked loudly. "It's useless. This prince has no time." "Scram," Long Fei said impatiently. Previously, he still had some camaraderie between fellow disciples, but after Duanmu Yao colluded with Junie Xie, he couldn't be bothered to be courteous with her. "Senior brother, I've brought Master's letter." Duanmu Yao took out a letter. It was indeed written by Elder Kinzo himself. When she found out that Master couldn't get in touch with Senior Brother, she told Master that she could find Senior Brother herself and have him give the letter to her. Master treated Senior Brother like a father. Senior Brother had never disobeyed any of Master's orders since he was young. She didn't believe that Senior Brother would disobey Master's orders for a woman. "Uncle Gao," Long Fei said. Uncle Gao quickly reached for the letter, but Duanmu Yao wouldn't give it to him. "Master said that I have to give it to you personally, and that you have to read it on the spot." Han Yunqi felt like she was going to be defeated by Duanmu Yao's shamelessness. She didn't need to guess to know that the letter in Duanmu Yao's hand was one of the 3 must-haves that Elder Kinzo had mentioned. Long Fei was about to speak when she stopped him and got off the carriage. Chapter 650. Long Fei didn't like to waste words, much less waste time with irrelevant people. Although Duanmu Yao held a lot of weight in the sword sect master's eyes and had considerable influence on Song Qiuzi's side, Long Fei still didn't place her in his eyes. If he wanted to meddle in Celestial Mountain's affairs, he didn't need Duanmu Yao's face. He didn't need her help, nor did he fear her interference. He was going to order someone to snatch the letter and leave, but he didn't say anything when he saw Han Yunxi get off the carriage. Instead, he quietly drank tea and took out the annals of the 7 noble families to study. If Han Yunxi liked to play, he'd let her be. If she went overboard, he'd clean up the mess for her. As soon as Han Yunxi got off the carriage, Uncle Gao withdrew. Duanmu Yao assumed that Long Fei would get off the carriage, but Han Yunxi got off alone. She felt disappointed and quickly wiped away her tears, not wanting Han Yunxi to see her in such a sorry state. Unfortunately, she could wipe away her tears, but the same couldn't be said for her disheveled state. Han Yunxi had already jumped off the carriage, but she sat back down and leaned lazily against the door frame, toying with the horsewhip in her hand. She didn't look at Duanmu Yao directly, but studied her from the side. Han Yunxi's gaze first rested on Duanmu Yao's feet, then slowly moved up and down her face. It was a standard look of contempt, full of disdain and disdain. Duanmu Yao found it an eyesore. Duanmu Yao was already feeling a little guilty, so Han Yunxi's scrutiny turned her shame into anger. Han Yunxi, what are you looking at? I'm looking at what a clingy person looks like, Han Yunxi said, before examining Duanmu Yao from head to toe. Now you can see clearly. You. Duanmu Yao was so angry that she almost attacked, but held back in the end. Since Han Yunxi dared to get out of the car, she must make her regret it for the rest of her life. Although Master didn't know about Song Qiuzi's marriage with the Tang clan, he did know that she'd come looking for senior brother to treat her injuries. No matter what, she couldn't make a move. Neither could her words or actions be in the wrong. She couldn't leave any evidence that could be used against her. She had to let Han Yunxi be in the wrong so that she could complain. So what if Han Yunxi was senior martial brother's official wife? Once she gave Master a bad impression, she would have no chance. One had to know that with his master's temper, once he didn't like someone, he would hate them to the core. There was no way he could change his mind. Duanmu Yao ignored Han Yunxi's humiliation and ignored her as a person. She said loudly, "Senior brother, are you going to disobey Master's orders? If you don't want to read this letter, I'll leave. I'll bring the letter back to Master later." It wasn't clear whether Long Fei heard her, but he was currently leaning lazily against a high pillow as he flipped through the pages of the annals of the 7 noble families. Han Yunxi grew angry as she narrowed her eyes at Duanmu Yao. This woman is obviously using the old Kinzo to threaten Long Fei. Who said Long Fei doesn't want to read this letter? You're the one who won't give it to him. Miss Duanmu, aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning for lying in broad daylight? Han Yunxi coldly asked. She's cursing me again. Duanmu Yao's rage boiled in her organs. She wanted nothing more than to curse her back, but for the sake of filing a complaint and not leaving any evidence behind, she held back. She took a deep breath before asking, Han Yunxi, you're a woman? Can't you talk things out properly? Why must you curse people? Han Yunxi smiled and tilted her head to ask the driver, did this princess consort curse people? Uncle Gao immediately shook his head. Han Yunxi then looked at Mu Linger, but before she could speak, Mu Linger ran over and asked, Han Yunxi, are you cursing people? Han Yunxi was very satisfied and said to Uncle Gao, here, you should learn more from Miss Linger in the future. Inside the carriage, Long Fei was focused on the biography. His lips silently curved upwards. In the end, he still paid attention to her every word and action. Duanmu Yao was so angry that she almost cried. She couldn't hold it in any longer and cursed, Han Yunxi, you're the one who's not human. Don't go too far. You have no right to interfere in the matters between me and my senior brother. Get out of this princess way right now. This princess? It had to be said that Duanmu Yao's tone and arrogant expression were nothing like the princess of a large country. Instead, She was more like a spoiled little princess from a small country. Whether it was the eldest princess or the little princess, she had long lost her noble status. If this princess consort remembers correctly, you've already been banished from the Western Zhou imperial family. You colluded with the prince of Western Zhou's enemy, which is tantamount to treason. Duanmu Yao, you don't even have the most basic principles of being a person. You don't even have the basic responsibilities of a child. Don't you feel embarrassed when you mention the word princess? Han Yunqi lectured seriously. A noble status is both an honor and a responsibility. It's not something to be flaunted. It's something to be protected with all your might. Duanmu Yao, if you're still human, you should hurry up and bury your mother. Han Yunqi didn't casually curse Duanmu Yao as not human. She would never use such vulgar words casually. Empress Shui had been kidnapped, then assassinated in the Chu clan barracks. Because Duanmu Yao didn't believe in the assassination, she used Celestial Mountain's influence to pressure the Chu clan and Ning Cheng into investigating the matter. Chapter 651. It wasn't clear whether Mu Ling understood the deeper meaning in Han Yunqi's eyes, but she returned Han Yunqi's mischievous grin. Then she joined Chu Shifeng and the rest and said loudly, "All of you, cover me. Mu Ling this has nothing to do with you. Get out of the way." Duanmu Yao panicked. Why didn't she realize there was another Mu Ling by her side? Han Yunqi's my boss, so her business is my business. Mu Ling was not only self-righteous, but even copied Duanmu Yao's overbearing attitude. "Duanmu Yao, this lady will give you a chance. Be a good girl and hand over that letter, or else..." She didn't finish, but chuckled. Just like Han Yunqi's smile, it was full of deep meaning. Seeing this, Han Yunqi stopped worrying. She knew that Mu Ling understood. Meddling in other people's business, you're seeking death. Duanmu Yao raised her sword and made a beautiful slash before pointing it at Mu Ling She looked fearless, but her heart was filled with anxiety. She could handle 11 Shadow Guard experts and Han Yunqi with ease, but Mu Ling was a different story. "Chu Shifeng, what are you waiting for?" As soon as Mu Ling finished speaking, Chu Shifeng and the 10 Shadow Guard rushed forward to surround Duanmu Yao. Duanmu Yao defended herself as she shouted, "You men have the nerve to gang up on a single woman like me? Be a good girl and hand over the letter. I promise no one's going to bully you." Mu Ling laughed disdainfully. She stood on one side, waiting for a chance to strike. Of course, Duanmu Yao knew that Mu Ling was waiting for a chance, so she had to split her attention to guard against Mu Ling But as soon as she did, Chu Shifeng's group closed in, forcing her to use all her strength. After a few rounds, Duanmu Yao and Chu Shifeng's group of 11 Shadow Guard experts were now evenly matched. Chu Shifeng's group couldn't gain the upper hand, but Duanmu Yao couldn't escape either. Duanmu Yao grew more and more worried that Mu Ling would make a move. She viciously blocked Chu Shifeng's attack with her sword, then spun around and drew a circle with her blade. The sharp edge of her blade forced the Shadow Guard back before she could catch her breath and speak. She shouted, "Senior Marshal Brother, I've suffered severe internal injuries. Can you help me treat them?" "Master, this..." She wanted to tell him everything in the letter. She wanted to say that it was the same whether he read the letter or not, and that there was no need for him to take it. She wanted to give herself a way out. But before she could finish, Mu Ling suddenly flew towards her at breakneck speed. Alarmed, Duanmu Yao was about to block when Chu Shifeng and the Shadow Guard flanked her from both sides. The situation was dire. Chu Shifeng and the Shadow Guard's attacks were far more dangerous than Mu Ling-er's. Han Yunqi didn't dare to reveal any more information. Gu had already suspected her last time. If she didn't restrain herself now and Gu found out the truth, Mu Ling would definitely be done for. Although Mu Ling had tricked Gu, a lover's heart wasn't a crime. Let her lie. Wasn't she lying to herself as well? Sometimes, the more you lie, the more it becomes true. It'll be a lifetime. Looking at Mu Ling Han Yunqi's heart was filled with emotions. She knew that even if she spent a lifetime with Mu Ling and didn't expose Gu's identity, Mu Ling was willing and able to do it. Mu Ling wanted to ask more, but when she saw Han Yunqi's meaningful glance, she immediately understood Han Yunqi's taboo. She said indifferently, "Okay, I'll wait for Senior to come back." Long Fei Yi wasn't worried about Gu dealing with Medical City's head elderling. After all, he didn't want to make a move against Medical City. Right now, he was paying attention to Ning Cheng's movements. Originally, he was recuperating in Yaoshui Villa while waiting for Chu Tianyin to surrender. Tang Li's marriage was just an accident. After visiting Gu Beiwei with Han Yunqi, Long Fei Yi returned alone. Gu Beiwei had brewed tea and was waiting for him. Any news from Chu Tianyin? Long Fei Yi got straight to the point. Gu Beiwei took out a small slip of paper. He sent it here 3 days ago. He asked about Empress Shui. Long Fei Yi glanced at it before asking cold, "What? Does he suspect your lordship?" "He's just probing. Chu Tianyin already has intentions of surrendering. Within this month, he'll—" Gu Beiwei trailed off, then lowered his voice, pushed the blame onto Ning Cheng. "How are you so sure?" Long Fei Yi was intrigued. He originally wanted to use Empress Shui's matter to pit Duanmu Yao against the Chu clan. That way, Celestial Mountain's strength would directly tie down Ning Cheng. If Chu Shifeng wanted to frame Ning Cheng, then that would be perfect. Gu Beiwei smiled faintly. That's because this one gave him the idea. Long Fei Yi was surprised, but felt that it made sense. He secretly rejoiced that he hadn't made an enemy out of Gu Beiwei. Otherwise, the sickly man might have become his strongest foe. "You've been exposed." Before Long Fei Yi could finish, Gu Beiwei cut him off. "Your Highness, don't worry. This one didn't tell Chu Tianyin that your Highness knew about my identity as a member of the Shadow Clan. He will never know." Long Fei Yi still believed Gu Beiwei's words. "All right, as long as he brings up Empress Shui's matter, your lordship will accept his surrender," Long Fei Yi said. While Long Fei Yi was plotting against Ning Cheng was also trying to figure out how to use Empress Shui's matter to evade Celestial Mountain's forces and scheme against Long Fei Yi. In the West Jing Imperial Palace, he was sitting lazily on the railing of the tallest building, a thin needle in his mouth. It was unclear what he was thinking, but his cold gaze seemed to wander. They're all south of Yaoshui, but 3,000 troops are enough. He won't return Yaoshui Prefecture to Western Zhou, Chu Tianyin said. Ning Cheng laughed coldly. Obviously. Chu Tianyin hid his anger deep in his eyes as he lowered his head in silence. "Has Duanmu Yao returned yet?" Ning Cheng asked next. "No news yet. Empress Shui's death was suspicious. She had no injuries or illnesses, nor any signs of poison. It'll be difficult to convince her that an assassination attempt was behind it," Chu Tianyin added. "You need to get involved in this matter." Ning Cheng was ordering him, not negotiating. He didn't give Chu Tianyin any leeway. "It's been so many years. Have you found any traces of the Shadow Clan?" "Duke of Ning, do you have an idea about Empress Shui's death?" Chu Tianyin probed. Unfortunately, Ning Cheng ignored him. "Answer your lordship's question. The Shadow Clan. Only Gu Beiwei was left of the Shadow Clan. Gu Beiwei was his only hope. How could Chu Tianyin betray Gu Beiwei? He was still hoping to use Gu Beiwei to borrow Long Fei Yi's strength to bite back at Ning Cheng. From what he understood of Ning Cheng, the man would never let go of his father and uncle. The Chu clan troops would remain beneath his Ning clan troops, while the Nether clan would remain beneath the D clan. He couldn't accept this. Ever since Chu Qingge's marriage alliance with Tianning, he'd fought against Long Fei Yi and tried all sorts of ways to bewitch Emperor Tianhui to prepare Chu Qingge's path. His father and uncle even found Medical City's head elderling to do something as immoral as inducing labor. They'd spent so much time and effort and paid so much just so they could break away from Western Zhou's imperial clan and gain a foothold in Cloud Realm continent. They'd wanted to use Tianning as a stronghold and revive Western Qin in the name of gathering the world's heroes to seize power. But all of their efforts had ended up in Ning Cheng's hands. In other words, Ning Cheng had stepped over the corpses of his Chu clan's archers to ascend to the position of regent. He refused to accept this, much less accept it, He was very clear that the Chu clan's current strength was too weak to fight for anything else. The only thought in his heart was revenge. Even if he had to work with his former rival Long Feiyi, he still wanted to drag Ning Cheng off his throne and stomp him beneath his feet. When his father and uncle found out that the Ning clan was the former Di clan, they hadn't told Gu Beiyue or Gu Beiyue's origins to Ning Cheng. He hadn't betrayed Gu Beiyue even after being tortured by Long Feiyi, so he'd never betray Gu Beiyue in front of Ning Cheng. He stared into Ning Cheng's eyes and said seriously, "The Shadow Clan has long died out." A flash of grief flashed past Ning Cheng's eyes, but he pretended to be relaxed with a smile. "What a pity. Do you have any leads on Western Qin's Imperial Orphan?" Chapter 653. The only clue the Nether Clan's Chu clan had was the Phoenix birthmark. They'd suspected Han Yunxi in the past, but Su Xiaoyu's investigations had denied them. Chu Tianyin had already given up on finding Western Qin's Imperial clan, but he'd never tell anyone about the Phoenix birthmark, especially Ning Cheng. If his Chu clan couldn't get their hands on it, Ning Cheng should forget about it. In their past dealings, Ning Cheng had repeatedly expressed his sincerity to Western Qin's Imperial clan. But in Chu Tianyin's eyes, he was nothing more than a hypocrite. Just like the Chu clan, he only wanted to use the emperor to command his vassals. Now that he was Tianying's regent, wasn't that exactly what he was doing? That damn Chu Chinga and that swaddling emperor were both under Ning Cheng's control. Tianying's true master had long been Ning Cheng. No, if I did, the Chu clan wouldn't have fallen to its current state. Chu Tianyin feigned self-mockery. Ning Cheng looked him up and down. Just then, they discussed a few things and said quite a few things. Just how much did Ning Cheng believe, and how much did he suspect? Only he knew. Ning Cheng examined Chu Tianyin for a while before saying, "You may withdraw." Empress Shui's matter. Chu Tianyin trailed off. He didn't understand why Ning Cheng had suddenly stopped him from getting involved. Could it be that Ning Cheng suspected something? "You don't need to worry about Empress Shui's matters. How can I ignore matters that concern my Chu clan troops?" Chu Tianyin grew anxious. "Don't worry, your lordship won't let the Chu clan suffer any losses," Ning Cheng said before waving a hand to dismiss Chu Tianyin. Chu Tianyin's suspicions grew, but he didn't dare say more. As soon as Chu Tianyin left, Ning Nuo walked out of his room. It was still chilly in the north, but he was still waving his folding fan like a refined and cultured gentleman. In reality, he was in a wretched state. Because Ning Jing had been looking for him everywhere, threatening to teach him a lesson, he had been hiding in the attic ever since he arrived in Xijing, not daring to show his face. "Big brother, guess what Duanmu Yao went to do?" Ning Nuo asked mysteriously. "Speak." Ning Cheng was very impatient. Even in the face of his own hands, he was always so high and mighty, arrogant and noble. An elder brother was like a father. Moreover, he was the head of the clan. He had always treated Ning Nuo, Ning Jing, and noble consort Ning in the same way he treated his other brothers in the clan. He treated them equally without exception. Duanmu Yao ran off to help Song Chiozi deal with the Tang clan. In the end, she was heavily injured. When Ning Nuo said this, he chuckled. Ning Cheng's face was cold as he said in a deep voice, "Can you finish what you want to say?" Ning Nuo didn't dare to keep him in suspense any longer. The peaceful western region of Cloud Realm Continent had long since become turbulent. This time, it was no longer a contest between three powers, but a contest between Long Feiyi and Ning Cheng. Long Feiyi had just stepped out of Gu Beiyue's courtyard when he saw Han Yunxi and Mu Ling walking towards him. Why are you here?" Han Yunxi immediately grew uneasy. Aside from accompanying her to check on Gu Beiyue's injuries, Long Feiyi had never come here alone. What was he doing here? Was he trying to make things difficult for Gu Beiyue? Mu Ling was also puzzled. "Your Highness Duke of Qin, could it be that you're sick and are here to see a doctor?" Han Yunxi grew even more nervous at these words. She hurried forward and took Long Feiyi's hand to check his pulse. "Where are you feeling unwell?" Mu Ling had been here for a few days, but Gu was nowhere to be seen. Han Yunxi had specially accompanied Mu Ling out for a walk today, and had just returned. Since she hadn't seen Long Fei, she decided to check on Gu Beiyue's injuries first. The corners of Long Fei's mouth twitched. It's nothing. This prince just came to see if Gu Qixia was here. I've been looking for him for a while now. Is he here? Mu Ling asked anxiously. Long Fei couldn't be bothered with her. He turned to Han Yunxi and said, Are you going in? I'll wait for you here. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei, then at the courtyard. She had a feeling that something was wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Let's go in and have a cup of tea. She tugged at Long Fei's hand. Long Fei had no choice but to follow her inside. Gu Beiyue was still in the courtyard, so he had clearly heard their conversation. When he saw Long Fei being dragged inside by Han Yunxi, a trace of a warm and doting smile flitted across his eyes. He cherished a person. Seeing her being cherished was enough to satisfy him. Some love was between two people. It was selfish. On the other hand, some love was between one person. It was noble. Gu Beiyue belonged to the latter category. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, Miss Ling even though he was sitting in a wheelchair, he didn't lose his manners. Long Fei took a seat at the side. As usual, he brewed tea without saying a word. Mu Ling didn't see Gu, so she slumped weakly on the stone table. Han Yunxi had long since gotten used to this. She earnestly inquired about and examined Gu Beiyue's injuries. Gu Beiyue was a doctor, but she was still worried and insisted on checking on him regularly. It takes 100 days for bones and tendons to heal. Even with the tendon-growing ointment, you still have to count the days. Han Yunxi sighed. You'll be able to recover by summer. The indifferent Gu Beiyue was somewhat agitated. It had been far too long since he'd stood up. Your Highness Duke of Qin, esteemed Wang Fei, if this one can stand up again, this one must first pay respects to the two of you in thanks. It wasn't clear whether Long Fei was listening, but he didn't say anything. Han Yunxi smiled and said, You're too polite. Last time, you even saved the Duke of Qin's life. How can we thank you? Gu Beiyue had nothing to say. Han Yunxi found his bashful appearance rather cute. Long Fei finally looked over. When he saw Gu Beiyue's appearance, his heart was filled with disdain. Gu Beiyue was a big liar. He must be crazy to allow Gu Beiyue to trick Han Yunxi like this. When he saw Long Fei looking over, Gu Beiyue even gave him a meaningful glance. Long Fei's expression immediately turned cold and he looked away. Fortunately, Han Yunxi didn't notice this scene. At this time, she was pondering something. She and Long Fei were about to go to Tianshan Mountain. She didn't know if they'd be able to see Gu Beiyue stand up in time. Actually, she wanted to bring Gu Beiyue with her to Tianshan Mountain. Perhaps Gu Beiyue could cure the old man and Kinzo's insanity. If that happened, Duamu Ya wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. After leaving Gu Beiyue's courtyard, Mu Ling went to look for her Qi brother. Han Yunxi said in a low voice, Long Fei, Gu Beiyue is a trustworthy person. So? Long Fei knew that Han Yunxi had something to say to him. Perhaps he can cure your master's insanity? Han Yunxi said seriously. Master won't be willing. Long Fei said indifferently. He had wanted to invite a famous doctor from Medical City to treat his master, but he had been rejected. Han Yunxi nodded helplessly. All right. He didn't make things difficult for you about the treatment, did he? Han Yunxi had been thinking about this matter. It's over. Don't worry. Long Fei hated Duanmu Yao's methods to begin with, so he didn't want to talk about it. Emin, let's not talk about it anymore, Han Yunxi said, but she was still worried. She wasn't afraid that Duanmu Yao would complain to Kinzo. In fact, she wanted to have a fight with Duanmu Yao. She didn't believe that Kinzo wouldn't be able to tell right from wrong. Unexpectedly, 3 days later, Han Yunxi really did have to fight with Duanmu Yao again. Kinzo wrote another letter to Long Fei. He didn't order Long Fei to do anything, but instead angrily rebuked Long Fei for condoning Han Yunxi's murder of Duanmu Yao's mother, Empress Shui. He warned Long Fei that if Duanmu Yao sought revenge on Han Yunxi, Long Fei wasn't allowed to interfere. Let the two women resolve it themselves. If Long Fei interfered, he would no longer recognize Long Fei as his disciple. After reading the letter, Han Yunxi was dumbfounded. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Your Highness, the one who killed Empress Shui, was clearly you. A complicated look flitted across Long Fei Ye's eyes. So this is what Ning Cheng is doing. Despicable. Chapter 654. Long Fei Yi was clearly the one who sent assassins to assassinate Empress Shui, but now Han Yunxi had become the scapegoat. Ever since she became Qin Wangfei, Han Yunxi had been wronged many times. She had long since gotten used to it. But this time, she looked at Long Fei Yi with a silly smile. She didn't know what to do. No matter how Ning Cheng tried to frame her, she wasn't afraid. Empress Shui's corpse was still there, so the truth was still there. She wasn't a coroner, but she had plenty of ways to find out the true cause of Empress Shui's death. As long as she revealed the truth, she would be cleared of all charges. But now, she couldn't really reveal the truth, because the true culprit was her husband, Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi leaned over the tea table, pretending to be serious as she stared at Long Fei Yi. She didn't say anything, but it was clear that she was warning Long Fei Yi. Long Fei Yi, do as you see fit. Long Fei Yi walked over and tousled Han Yunxi's bangs. Scared? Goading her. Han Yunxi glared at him but didn't answer. Long Fei Yi laughed heartily. This prince will admit to it. Han Yunxi immediately slapped his hand away. What's there to admit without evidence? I won't admit it, and you're even less allowed to admit it. I won't admit it even if you beat me to death. Wasn't that exactly what Long Fei wanted her to say? Coldly, he ordered, someone, bring me brush and ink. Long Fei Yi was about to reply to Elder Kinzo's letter. Han Yunxi immediately scooted over to take a look. She discovered that the usually taciturn Long Fei Yi had written several lines this time. The gist of it was that Duanmu Yao couldn't make unfounded accusations without evidence. If Duanmu Yao could prove that Empress Shui was killed by Han Yunxi, then he wouldn't interfere in their grudge. However, if Duanmu Yao was unable to provide any evidence, he would definitely pursue the matter against Duanmu Yao for framing him. He would also plead with Elder Kinzo not to interfere. After Long Fei Yi finished writing, Han Yunxi asked, "That's it?" "Okay." Long Fei Yi sealed the box and even stamped his seal on it to make sure that no one would steal it. Therefore, once your master agrees to your request, he will definitely agree to your request. Even if the real culprit is found to be you, your master can't intervene in this matter? Han Yunxi asked jokingly. This was indeed a loophole. However, how could Long Fei Yi be so stupid as to expose himself? After all, he did not want to anger his master Kinzo. Moreover, he did not want to offend the royal family of Western Zhou. Northernly hadn't made any moves in the past 6 months, but he had always been on guard against them. After all, Western Zhou was a force that couldn't be ignored when dealing with Northernly. After having the letter sent away, Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi did not act rashly. They were both people who could keep their cool. Chapter 655. Could Duanmu Yao win? Bai Yanqing didn't seem to hear Jun Yixie's question. He held the chess piece in one hand and stroked his beard with the other as he seriously pondered the game. Jun Yixie was such an arrogant and insufferably arrogant person, but in front of his master, he was always obedient like a big boy. Seeing that his master didn't answer, he didn't dare to ask a second question no matter how curious he was. He could only wait quietly for his master to make his next move. Little junior sister Bai Yuqiao looked at Jun Yixie from the sidelines and felt pity for him for some reason. In her eyes, Jun Yixie was absolutely obedient and trusting of her master, but her master kept all sorts of secrets from her senior brother. Bai Yuqiao didn't understand why her master kept so many things from her senior brother. She secretly felt that it was unfair to him, but she never dared to say anything. She knew better than her senior brother how terrifying it was to betray her master. After a while, Bai Yanqing didn't make his move, but said mildly, whether she wins or loses depends on what she's competing on and how she's competing. Jun Yixie rejoiced and quickly said, just this once, the matter of Empress Shui. Winning or losing doesn't depend on such trivial matters, but on the end. Just wait. Duanmu Yao will win, Bai Yanqing said lightly. The end? Could it be that master already has plans? Jun Yixia asked in a low voice. As he saw it, his master had told him to get involved in Han Yunqi and Long Fei Ye's affairs not because he was afraid he'd cause trouble, but because he had other plans. Bai Yanqing didn't reveal anything, but asked, just wait. How long will it take to fill the gap in South City's horse farms? Jun Yixia grew gloomy. Master was always like this, changing the topic in the middle of a sentence. It made his heart itch. When Jun Yixia didn't reply, Bai Qingyan gave him an unhappy glare before he obediently replied, it'll take at least a year or so to make up for the shortfall. I've already contacted Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's horse merchants. If we can strike a deal with them, the shortfall won't be so severe, Jun Yixia replied honestly. Has the planting of herbs in the Snow Mountain been started? Bai Yanqing asked again. There are still some details to be discussed. Haha, Ningjing, this woman, is really hard to deal with. Recently, she's been preparing for her wedding, so the Snow Mountain matter has been delayed. Jun Yixia was also very busy during this period. Bai Yanqing only nodded and didn't comment on anything. He continued to play chess. Over the past few days, the matter with Empress Shui had only grown bigger and bigger, but Han Yunqi and Long Fei Yi had remained unmoved. They had neither expressed their stance nor made any public statements. As a result, everyone was even more curious about the truth of the matter. There were still 2 days before Duanmu Yao's challenge, but Han Yunqi was currently sitting in the courtyard, smiling foolishly at a table of letters. All of them were addressed to her. There were letters from the Tian and General Mu's estate, the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate, Pill Fiend Pharmacy, Medical City, Medicine City, and even the Black Market. All of the letters expressed their concern and reminded her to be careful of Duanmu Yao and avoid fighting her head-on. The letter from Medical City was written by Third Elder Shen, who said that if Han Yunqi was willing, he could recommend the best coroner in Cloud Realm Continent and come personally to assist with the autopsy. The letter from Medicine City was written by the King of Medicine himself. That old man who didn't care about worldly affairs actually knew about the matter as well. In the letter, he said that if Han Yunqi was willing, she could bring Empress Shui's body to the medicine hut so he could personally assist with the autopsy. The letter even included a greeting from the old man from Medicine Requesting Cave. Han Yunqi had always known that she didn't have good relations with people. She would offend people for no apparent reason and incur their hatred and enmity. Reading through the pile of letters, she suddenly realized that she had quite a few friends. She smiled at Long Fei Yi and said, my relations with people seem pretty good. Does this count as having friends all over the world? This is called networking, Long Fei Yi remarked. Even he had to admit that Han Yunqi's connections in Cloud Realm Continent over the years weren't to be underestimated. Esteemed Wang Fei has always had good relations with people. Before Gu Beiyue could finish, a black figure suddenly flew down from the sky. It was none other than Gu. He was dressed in black robes that covered his entire body except for his frivolous eyes. More accurately, he should be called Gu Qisha. Gu Qisha rushed towards Han Yunqi as soon as he touched the ground, but Long Fei Yi kicked him before he could even get close. Fortunately, he retreated in time. He was too anxious to argue with Long Fei to ask, Poison Lass, is Duanmu Yao serious about coming to challenge us? Han Yunqi didn't speak, but slowly turned to look into the room. Gu Beiyue was smiling while Long Fei Yi drank his tea. As long as Gu Qisha stayed away from Han Yunqi, he wouldn't bother with his business. Poison Lass, Gu Qisha wanted to ask more questions, but Mu Ling suddenly rushed out of the room and cried, Your Excellency Pill Fiend? Besides Mu Ling, everyone else knew that Gu Qisha had been avoiding Mu Ling on purpose for the past few days. Everyone remained silent, waiting for Gu Qisha to run away. Unexpectedly, Gu Qisha ignored Mu Ling and didn't rush to leave. Instead, he asked Han Yunqi with concern, Poison Lass, is that true? Mu Ling, who was rushing over, stopped in her tracks when she saw this. Her joyous expression froze on her face as she stared blankly at Gu Qisha's anxious expression. She should be happy that he finally appeared, happy that he didn't run away as soon as he saw her. But But why does my heart hurt so much? It's true, Han Yunqi replied, then stood up and pulled Mu Ling'er over. She questioned Gu Qisha. This lass has been waiting for you for days. You're really putting on airs, aren't you? Gu Qisha ignored them and turned to Long Fei Yi. Duke of Qin, are you really going to let Poison Lass fight that slut Duanmu Yao one-on-one? Long Fei Yi couldn't be bothered to answer. Gu Qisha didn't need to worry about this matter. We'll talk about it when she gets here. She's not even here yet, so who knows what kind of evidence she'll bring. If I don't admit it, what can she do to me? After Han Yunqi explained, she changed the topic and said seriously, Ling wants to talk to you about the Mu family. Madame Lian Xian's matter has dragged on for so long. Shouldn't you give her an answer? The two of you should have a good talk. Also, I've given Ling the medicine tome the King of Medicine gave her. If there's anything she doesn't understand, please teach her. The two of you will be the pillars of Pill Fiend Pharmacy in the future. Only then did Gu Qisha look at Mu Ling'er. Mu Ling'er's heart was stifled, but she didn't show it on her face. She immediately put on a worshipful expression and smiled obsequiously at Gu Qisha. Esteemed Senior Pill Fiend, I offended you last time at Pill Fiend Pharmacy. Please forgive me on account of esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness. Gu Qisha had long forgotten that this girl had challenged him on Pill Fiend Pharmacy's grand opening day. He didn't say anything and simply nodded before sitting down next to Gu Beiwei. Mu Ling'er immediately leaned over and respectfully poured him a cup of tea. Esteemed Senior, please be careful. It's hot. Gu Qisha raised a brow at her and said in a strange tone, You're making me sound old? How about I call you Master? Mu Ling'er hurriedly asked. She clearly wanted to take him as her master. Gu Qisha picked up a cup of tea and drank it under his black robes, pretending not to hear her. However, Mu Ling'er was even more ruthless. She immediately knelt down and kowtowed to him. If Master doesn't object, please accept this bow from your disciple. Gu Qisha spat out the tea in his mouth. I didn't agree. Get up. Mu Ling'er blinked her large eyes innocently. But I've already kowtowed. What should I do? Would he still have any freedom if he accepted a disciple like this? Who knows when she'll discover the truth? Gu Qisha was truly frightened. He earnestly said, I'll kowtow back to you, all right? Mu Ling'er's eyes were wet, but she still laughed out loud. Senior really knows how to joke. If Senior isn't willing, then forget it. It wasn't clear how many people present noticed the tears in Mu Ling'er's eyes, but Han Yunqi did. Looking at this stubborn girl, Han Yunqi's heart ached. Perhaps it was because she saw a shadow of herself in the past, or perhaps it was because blood was thicker than water, or perhaps it was because they hit it off. However, Han Yunqi knew that there was only so much she could do to help Gu Qisha. If she continued to help Gu Qisha, it would only backfire. When it came to matters of love, both parties had to be willing. Although she was touched by Mu Ling'er's willingness, she couldn't possibly force or scheme against Gu Qisha. Long Fei Yi brought over a cup of tea, interrupting Han Yunqi's train of thought. She looked at him, but he was busy brewing tea and didn't notice her. From this angle, the curve of his face was so cold that it was penetrating, exuding a cold arrogance that kept everyone at arm's length. It had been more than 3 years, but he was still the same person from 3 years ago. Not much had changed. Han Yunqi sighed in her heart. Long Fei Yi, fortunately, you also like me. Since Mu Ling'er had already said so, how could Gu Qisha not agree? He smiled strangely. Forget it. Forget it. Then, can Senior give me some pointers on the King of Medicine's ancient medical book? Who said that Mu Ling'er had given up? She still had to work hard. Han Yunqi felt heartache, but she also wanted to laugh. Gu Qisha's expression had already darkened, but fortunately, his face was hidden by his mask. All right. If you don't understand, just ask. Why are you being so polite? Even if Gu Qisha agreed, Mu Ling'er might not be able to find him for guidance in the future. Thank you, Senior. Mu Ling'er was still very happy. She actually took out the medical book on the spot and even included a thick notebook. Senior, I've already finished reading this book and memorized everything that I didn't understand. There are already more than 100 parts in this first book that I don't understand. Let's just ask these questions for today, Mu Ling said seriously. Before Gu Qi Sha could speak, Gu Beiwei said indifferently, "This one is tired. You guys go ahead. This one will take his leave first." As soon as Gu Beiwei left, Long Feiyi stood up, followed by Han Yunxi. She smiled and said, "We still have matters to attend to. You guys can take your time discussing them." Gu Qi Sha originally wanted to say something, but this time, he fell silent. Just like that, Mu Ling continued to pester Gu Qi Sha for the next 2 days, humbly asking for guidance and taking notes. After 2 days of interaction, Gu Qi Sha actually dispelled his previous suspicions. This was because other than asking about the medical book, Mu Ling didn't bother him at all. Perhaps he was overthinking things. Mu Ling was only interested in learning and hadn't discovered his secret. There was no harm in teaching this little girl. In any case, all of Pill Fiend Pharmacy's matters would be taken care of by her in the future. He wasn't going to guard Pill Fiend Pharmacy to the death. Early in the morning 2 days later, Duamu Yao really did come to challenge him. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."